Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, Township Council Agenda Meeting, November 10th, 2015. Meeting called to order by myself at 7:30 p.m. Please rise for the flag salute. Mr. Stanton, if you would.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Here.
Mr. DiPiero.
Here.
Mr. Paluso.
Present.
Mr. Stanton.
Here.
Mr. Valori.
Here.
Others present, Mayor James R. Barbario, L&M Sandman, Business Administrator, Paula Calzarelli, Assistant Business Administrator, John Inglesino, Esquire, Township Attorney, Nora Jolie, Deputy Register, and Ann Cucci, CFO. Purpose of this meeting is set the agenda for the regular Township Council meeting of November 24th, 2015. Formal action may or may not be taken.
Statement of compliance. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the Municipal Building on January 8, 2015, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in both the Daily Record on January 12, 2015, and the Star Ledger on January 14, 2015, and was forwarded by fax to local newspapers and local radio stations on January 8, 2015. Note, council meetings are videotaped and aired on Cablevision Public Access Channel 21 at 11 o'clock a.m. on Sundays, and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net.
Okay, at this time, we'll be going into closed session. Resolution, whereas the Open Publics Meeting Act, Public Law, 1975, Chapter 231, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Council is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, and whereas the Township Council wishes to discuss attorney-client privilege and litigation, RD Realty versus Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, and whereas minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires confidentiality, the minutes can be made public. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills that the public be excluded from this meeting. Motion to adjourn made by myself, seconded by Mr. Stanton. Roll call.
Mr. DiPiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Mr. Valori.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Would be nice. I think he's. Yeah, that's right. Hey, look at he's in for the. We're rolling for the long ball.
Good.
Make a motion to reconvene into open session?
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. Stanton, seconded by Mr. Paluso. Roll call.
Mr. DiPiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Mr. Valori.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes. Okay, at this time, we're going to have a presentation on the Waterview site.
Okay, thank you, Council President. I'll be reading this into the record. As many of you know, a certain tract of land on Route 46 and Intervale Road, approximately 26 acres in size, known as the Waterview site, has been the subject of significant controversies for years. Before I became mayor, a developer had attempted to get this property rezoned for a town center, and I understand there were other proposals as well. In 2012 and 13, RD Realty attempted to rezone the property to permit upscale townhomes on 10-plus acres and a Whole Foods retail center along Route 46. As we all know, in the fall of 2013, the council voted against the RD Realty proposal. But that did not end the story. RD Realty sued, challenging our existing zoning. The township won that case in trial court, but an appeal is pending. After the state Supreme Court ruled on Mount Laurel 4 in March of this year, RD Realty also filed an application before the Board of Adjustment for 120 affordable housing units. As Councilman DiPiero had accurately stated in the past, and as our township attorney will explain more fully in a moment, we have come to a true fork in the road. We have to make a choice. One choice is to put our heads in the sand and let the courts decide the fate of this property. If we do that, the odds overwhelmingly suggest that we will have a court-ordered multifamily housing development on this site consisting of several hundred units. In fact, our town planner has conducted an analysis and has concluded that, now there's two, if we get the 666 residential intervale plan, that would be 666 apartments, 130 affordable housing units at 20%, an estimated total residence of 1,300, estimated public school-age children 157, the fiscal loss estimated for the township negative 326,000, public schools is negative 950,000. The total loss is $1.7 million. If we get the 450 residential development plan, 450 apartments, 90 affordable housing units at 20%, estimated total residents 883, estimated public school-age children 106, fiscal loss to the township is $220,615. The public schools is $640,000 loss. That's a total loss per year now of $860,000. This is not what I desire for Parsippany, and I don't think that's what most people desire for the township. But that is the result of the settlement agreement that my administration has placed before the council tonight. Several weeks ago, a Whole Foods representative had reached out to the township, and we have recently engaged in dialogue with the representative of the Whole Foods, in which Whole Foods has told us that if Waterview settlement is not approved immediately, they will acquire the Pathmark site at the Partroy Shopping Plaza and open a new store there. That would remove Whole Foods' interest from the Waterview site, leaving it completely vulnerable to 100 of units of multifamily rental housing with a 20% affordable housing component. I don't think that's a good result for Parsippany. Tonight, we have the ability to avoid another large apartment complex on Route 46, which will cost taxpayers millions of dollars. If this settlement agreement isn't approved tonight, tomorrow we will not have the ability to stop a large-scale multifamily housing on the Waterview site. The benefits of the settlement agreement are good for Parsippany and are as follows. Parsippany prevents unwanted high-density multifamily housing on the site. Parsippany then would acquire 10.63 acres of open space. Under the settlement agreement, the upper 10.63 acres by Forest Drive will be acquired by the township for the purchase price of $3.5 million. That property will be deed restricted and remain open space forever. The purchase price will be paid from our open space trust fund, which was approved by our voters. Currently, in only the open space acquisition fund portion, there's $4 million in it. Based on the current open space tax, the acquisition portion of the fund generates approximately $716,000 in recurring revenues each year. Thus, we would either bond for the purchase and pay off the bonds with open space dollars, or we could pay the full amount from our funds without bonding. That decision not be made tonight. The bottom line is this: the purchase price is paid to RD Realty for 10.63 acres and will not cause any tax increase for Parsippany residents. I'll say that again. Will not cause any, there will be not any tax increase to the Parsippany residents. Parsippany gets state-of-the-art upscale retail center anchored by Whole Foods. There will be no housing on this, in this proposal.
No school children.
Okay, and no school-age children. The settlement is a winner for Parsippany taxpayer. The project will generate $500,000 in recurring net gain for Parsippany taxpayers, making it a positive rateable for our community. Jobs. This agreement will result in short-term, high-paying construction jobs and many permanent jobs. This is good for Parsippany. Too many of our residents are hurting for work. This project provides meaningful economic opportunity for jobs. This agreement will reduce our vacant land available for development and therefore should reduce Parsippany's affordable housing obligation. These are the most significant benefits for Parsippany, but we can only realize these benefits if this agreement is agreed upon tonight. Again, the alternative is a disaster. I know the debate over the Waterview site has been heated and polarizing, and I appreciate the concerns voiced by residents. I have taken those concerns to heart, which is why I believe the settlement is the best permanent solution for this site and Parsippany. I also appreciate the Township Council's involvement in this process. I know it may seem, though, at times that the council and I are on different pages, but outside the spotlight, members of the council have worked productively with me and the members of my administration. And tonight, I thank Council President Paul Carifi, Councilman Lou Valori, Councilman Brian Stanton, Councilman Robert Paluso, and Councilman Michael DePiero for at least having a discussion about this in this process. I will now turn over to the Township Attorney to discuss the settlement agreement and how it relates to Parsippany's affordable housing obligation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a moment, I want to outline in a little more detail the settlement proposal. But first, I think it's necessary to give a brief historic overview of the Mount Laurel Doctrine, because people have said many, many times, well, if the property is owned PUD or office, shouldn't that be enough to thwart the kind of multifamily, undesired multifamily development that the mayor is talking about? And the answer is no. Your zoning laws by themselves do not provide a firewall barrier to unwanted high-density multifamily housing. And the reason for that is the Mount Laurel Doctrine, which many of you have heard. Mount Laurel was a case, landmark New Jersey Supreme Court case decided in 1975, in which the New Jersey Supreme Court said that every municipality has a constitutional obligation to provide for its fair share of low and moderate income housing. And he called upon the legislature to enact rules and regulations to implement the Supreme Court's edict. The legislature did not do that, and so in 1983, the Supreme Court gave us Mount Laurel II, in which the Supreme Court gave us the builder's remedy. And what that means is that if towns don't comply, and if the state doesn't have a mechanism to determine what fair share obligation is, then irrespective of how a property is zoned, a developer can go in, and as long as they're willing to do a 20% set-aside, then they can build multifamily housing with an affordable component, again, irrespective of what the zoning for that property provides. Well, the legislature listened to that, and in 1985 enacted the Fair Housing Act, which established the Council on Affordable Housing, otherwise known as COA, a word or a phrase that you've probably heard. COA established fair share obligations for each municipality in the state of New Jersey in what they call a series of rounds, which were periods of time that municipalities had to meet certain threshold requirements of affordable housing. Round 2 expired in 1999, and from 1999 until today, COA has unsuccessfully adopted constitutionally compliant regulations. And so, after a series of court decisions, in 2013, the court ordered COA to use Round 1 and Round 2 methodologies in order to compute what the Round 3 obligation was, and Round 3 would go until 2024. And when the Council on Affordable Housing opted not to do that, the court in March of this year declared COA defunct and assigned the tasks of deciding each municipality's affordable housing obligation to the courts in what I call a back-to-the-future kind of decision. In 1985, we were moving jurisdiction to determine affordable housing obligations to a state agency, and here we are away from the courts, and now here we are in 2015 moving that obligation away from the state agency and back to the courts. And that is because COA just became dysfunctional. So where does that leave us? Municipalities had an opportunity to file declaratory judgment actions, and contrary to the local press, I can assure you that Parsippany did file a declaratory judgment action timely back in early July of this year and I've reported on that extensively at public meetings. Parsippany did acquire an immunity order against builder remedy lawsuits because Parsippany had been playing by the rules over the years and doing what responsible municipalities had to do with respect to affordable housing. So we are now in a period where we are attempting to find out what our obligation is. And we have court-ordered immunity now until April 6th, and a process in place which will determine what our obligation is. We know the obligation is more, not less. We don't know how much more. Experts for the Fair Share Housing Council and for the Builders Association have estimated Parsippany's obligation to be as high as 2,100 units. Well, that's 20% of the total units that could potentially be built in Parsippany, and I went to law school, so I'm not so good with math, but it's a lot of units. Now, we have a municipal expert who will be issuing a report in middle December. It's due with the court in January. We're participating with a consortium of municipalities to engage the firm of eConsult, who's going to give us what their view is of our number, which hopefully will be significantly less than what the experts for the Fair Share Housing folks have concluded. And the court will issue what they call a preliminary determination of need, probably sometime in February. In the meantime, RD Realty has intervened in our declaratory judgment action. Developers around the state have been filing papers to intervene in that action because they want a seat at the table. They want to have a say in what they feel Parsippany's obligation is, and they want to have a say in terms of which sites the affordable housing units will be constructed upon. And Judge Hansberry, who is the presiding judge in Morris County for Mount Laurel Matters, has liberally permitted developers to intervene, and in fact has signed court orders that require municipalities, including Parsippany, to receive and review concept plans from intervened developers and to meet with them and engage in good faith negotiations regarding their respective sites. Suffice it to say, and Mr. Snikes will provide some more detail on this in a few moments, the Waterview site is a site which is very suitable for development, and therefore it will be very difficult to say that no development of the Mount Laurel variety could occur on that site. And so that has provided, I think, some incentive for us to be here today and to try to resolve our differences with RD Realty in a way that will ensure the long-term use of this property in a manner that, under the circumstances, provides benefit to the municipality. So, as part of the settlement proposal, as was indicated, the top 10.63 acres will be conveyed to the township in consideration of the sum of $3.5 million. We have made some effort, and with the help of some of the residents in the area, efforts have been made to increase and maximize the amount of property that the township will get. My sense is that 10.63 acre will increase somewhat, and the developer has indicated that they would be willing to increase it, but at the moment that's the most they can commit to. Once the site plan, the subdivision line, the engineering is done, there may be an opportunity to increase the acreage, but that is the bare minimum that the township would acquire. The bottom 16.1 acres of the property will become a state-of-the-art shopping center anchored by a 49,000 square foot Whole Foods, and Mr. Snikes will in a moment sort of walk you through what the plan is and what the restrictions are with regard to the size of tenants. One of the issues that was raised during the 2013 proposal was the idea that that big box was not something that would be welcomed. And I actually think it was Council President Karifi at the time who made the point about the impact that that would have on the police force and public safety and so forth. And so there have been measures put in place to restrict the size of any one tenant in that center. And Mr. Snikes will review that in a moment. The other aspect of this settlement is that it will resolve three matters that RD Realty has with the township. Number one, after the settlement agreement is approved, RD Realty will withdraw the application that it has before the Zoning Board of Adjustment for an all-affordable housing project. They'll withdraw that without prejudice, meaning that if the deal falls apart, they could always reapply, but they will withdraw it and take it off the docket. Number two is that the action that they currently have pending in the appellate division, they will make an effort to stay so that nothing happens on that action, and if the appellate division doesn't cooperate, then they will withdraw that. Again, without prejudice, they could refile it if the deal falls apart. And number three is essentially they would stay their current case in which they've intervened in our declaratory judgment action so that the Mount Laurel case would be stayed as well, again, pending action here. The way this works is that, assuming that the settlement agreement is approved tonight, then the council will also consider for first reading a zoning ordinance that will implement the settlement proposal. The ordinance would not be enacted tonight. Legally, you can't do that. It's a two-step process. But the ordinance would be introduced tonight. It would be published, and we would envision that there would be a public hearing and adoption at the December 8th meeting. Thereafter, RD Realty will submit plans for the approvals to the planning board for the Whole Foods Center. And once RD Realty has obtained all governmental approvals for that project, every governmental approval short of a building permit, then we will have a closing so that the township would acquire the open space piece, and then they would be issued the building permit. And you would, again, that's the way we're going to implement the center. The open space piece, it will be bought with open space money, so it could only be utilized in accordance with the law regarding open space funds. There is the opportunity to further restrict the usage of that property, and that will be a decision that the council will make. The agreement will also be permanent. As consideration for the settlement agreement, any change to that plan would have to come back to the governing body, and the governing body would have to approve it. They just couldn't go circumvent the plan or the ordinance and go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment to get some additional relief. We put in the agreement, the specific consideration for the agreement is it requires a vote of the council. And then, of course, you know, if they wanted to make zone modifications, that would also require the vote of the governing body as well. So the governing body will stay in control and will be the ultimate arbiter of the site. There will not be the opportunity to circumvent them through another board. I do want to say, I think that pretty much summarizes you know, the business terms of the agreement. I do want to echo the mayor's comment. First of all, I think Councilman DePiero made points that were very, very true in terms of the concerns that he echoed back in 2013 about what may become of this site, and I wanted to recognize that. In particular, I also wanted to thank Councilman Valori and Karifi, who, as the mayor indicated, outside the glare of the spotlight, actually worked very cooperatively with me in terms of trying to come up with a plan that might work. And that work that we did over a year ago actually became very important because it was only recently that we received the phone calls that the mayor alluded to from Whole Foods indicating that there was an opportunity for them to acquire the Pathmark site, and that because they are committed to being in this area, they were either going to go there or they were going to go to the Waterview site. They have expressed to me a strong preference for the Waterview site, but if they can't get that site, they'll go to Pathmark, and once they're gone, then, that makes the property available and, as the mayor said, vulnerable to undesired high-density development. So that's what brings us here tonight. Ed Snikes is the township planner, and I would ask him to come up, Ed, in more detail, explain the plan, and also to provide the community with some of the fiscal impacts. And while he's getting set up, the fiscal impacts pertain to 3 different scenarios. One scenario is the concept plan that RD Realty proposed as part of the Mount Laurel case, and they proposed 660 units of multifamily housing on the site, and so he will provide fiscal impacts for that. He will also provide fiscal impacts for a lesser development of about 450 units, which is much more in line with, if you were to develop the whole site, much more in line with what an appropriate suitability analysis would likely show for the site at full build-out for multifamily housing. And lastly, he will provide you with a fiscal impact analysis with regard to the plan that's before the council tonight. So, Mr. Snikes, I think I timed that well for you to commence your presentation.
No, I don't.
Tap on it a while it gets warmed up or something. Wake it up.
No. No. Get extra batteries I bought just in case.
We do need enough.
And just talk loud into it.
I think they are now.
Test, test.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Tap it.
I heard 'em.
Oh, you heard me.
Kevin Matt.
No? Sorry. Fonzarelli, I'm not.
I think they like do something, right?
So we have that matter one, that one seems to work better. Still won't. How about that one?
Conspiracy
No,
theories get acted up.
Won't get in for the record.
Let me get that.
See what Nora has in her hand. That one doesn't work either? Is it on? Oh,
There you go.
Yes.
that's the one Nora
We
has.
have success. Everybody hear me okay? Very good, thank you. Good evening again. My name is Ed Snikes. I'm a professional planner and a landscape architect with Burgess Associates. We are the township planners that consult to the governing body as well as the planning board. What I'll have for you this evening is, Mr. Inglesino pointed out a moment ago, is a presentation of the 2 plans. And basically what we wanted to do is to inform everybody as to what the actual plans that we are reviewing consist of. And I wanted to give you the full details of both plans. There are 2 illustrations that I have up on the board. The first one is not in color. That is actually the multifamily concept that's being, that was actually submitted to the courts for our consideration and for our review, based upon the intervener or RD Realty and what they've submitted to the courts for consideration. The other plan to the left is the actual latest plan from RD Realty regarding the commercial and open space parcel arrangement. First, for purposes of orientation, for people who may not have seen this plan before or need to know where the adjacent roads are, what you're looking at is north is straight up on the illustration. At the bottom of the illustrations on both drawings, and it's the same on both drawings, is Route 46, right here. Waterview Boulevard is to the right, over to the right-hand side. Intervale Road and Forest Drive is to the top. So again, it's the same illustration that everyone has probably seen from earlier discussions about this, but I wanted everybody to have that same orientation. First, what I'd like to talk about is what has been submitted to the courts for consideration. As was mentioned earlier, is a plan for 666 units. Again, the site overall has 26 acres in total area as to the entire parcel. This plan proposes 4-story buildings arranged around parking courts or parking areas. It's a very intense plan, and it obviously is utilizing almost the majority of the site. It does propose 50-foot setbacks adjacent to some of the property lines, not all of them. Where you have residential properties, it does get closer than that, off towards the R3 zone, which is in the northern portion of the tract. But it comes up to approximately 50 feet away from Intervale Road. A little bit more distance from Route 46 because of the lay of the land, the way the site slopes, is that it slopes in this sort of southerly direction. They are proposing stormwater basins and access drives that run out to Waterview Boulevard here and here, so there'll be 2 access drives there. But what they have also included is an access drive to Intervale Road as another component of this plan. In addition to that, it has the breakdown of the number of units is 406 2-bedroom, 260 1-bedroom, and the remainder is 3-bedroom units in accordance with the color requirements. 2 bedrooms, it was a 406. Yes. But they also have 134 affordable housing units in that, and that's a 20% set aside. That's the normal ratio that you look at in a development. Excuse me if I'm standing in front of the illustration for some people, and I apologize, my back to the board. This plan shows an overall number of parking spaces of 1,283 parking spaces, which would be in conformance with what we call the RSIS standards. That's the state standards that require the number of parking spaces. So they would conform with the state standard based upon that plan. The plan basically is about 25 units to the acre, and as you can imagine, it has significant impacts as a result of that overall density. What was mentioned earlier, and again, I wanted to first give an orientation of the 2 plans, and then I'll get into a fiscal review of both plans. The next plan I'll talk about is the proposal that's before the council for consideration this evening. This is a plan that shows a total of 153,510 square feet in total. And it's made up of several buildings or components. Whole Foods is at 49,000 square feet. That would be positioned approximately here on the site. Also, they have a retail facility of about 40,000 square feet. But as was mentioned earlier, what we're working into the settlement agreement, as well as any ordinance that would come from that settlement agreement, is that that building could be not, or the tenants within that building can't be any larger than 20,000 square feet. We would have a cap on the tenancy size in that building. The next building is Building C. I went through Building A, B, now on to Building C. That's a square footage of about 28,800 square feet. The next building is Building D. That comprises 32,160 square feet. But again, that 32,000 square foot building must be broken up so that no pad is larger than 20,000 square feet, or no store is larger than 20,000 square feet. And that was very specific to the discussions and to the agreements and arrangements that were being discussed, because there was the intent not to have a larger big box facility, or that someone can group all the buildings together. As Mr. Inglesino mentioned, that's going to be part of the settlement agreement, so therefore any changes to that actually has to come back to the governing body for any consideration or any further modifications. In addition to that, if those of you who may not have seen the earlier plan, but this plan basically takes the proposed building and moves it further towards the south and closer to Route 46, such that we're able to gain the additional acre, a little bit over an acre area of open space. It's now at 10.63 acres. The proposed development of the commercial portion is 16.1. In addition to that, the buffer area now is 400 and, I want to make sure I have this right, 458 feet of distance from the R3 zone to the edge of the open space parcel. There is a request for some grading easements onto that open space parcel. And that was something that was brought up earlier in review of the plan because of the natural grade of the property. And they're trying to avoid large retaining walls to the back of the buildings. So what is shown in the lighter green, the darkest green, is the area that would stay as preserved trees untouched. But in the lighter green areas would be a grading easement area that actually isn't fully defined yet. And what I mean by that is that it's going to depend upon final grading design of the parcel. They're asking for this distance, which is approximately about 100 feet in width at this narrowest location, adjacent to the back of the building. It does get smaller, about 10 feet or 15 feet in width adjacent to Intervale Road, and then just does fan out towards the frontage of the property. But I will tell you that that's going to depend upon final grading. And that's something at site plan review that the planning board will be reviewing. And I guarantee you, with the board, understanding the board, they'll be looking at minimizing that amount of disturbance in the back of the buildings. In addition to that, they've requested some drainage easement areas. And what they mean by that are surface swales. What a surface swale is, it's basically a ditch that collects water and runs it away from your pervious surfaces and things of that nature. They're not proposing any stormwater features within that grading easement. They're asking for just that drainage adjustments. Where they are dealing with the stormwater management is actually they're proposing stormwater management as part of the jug handle that exists out on Route 46. So that would be part of their stormwater management facilities. And I'll tell you that they'll be in full compliance and they'll be required by the planning board to be in full compliance with NJDEP requirements for both water quality as well as infiltration. It probably would, most of them in that instance. In addition to that, there may also be some mechanical improvements to the infiltration of stormwater underneath the actual parking areas. And so that is also a component of their plan. What they've also done to enlarge the open space area is to move, again, the parking area and the buildings further towards Route 46. That does then bring the parking a little bit closer to Route 46. We are asking for that to be about 25 feet, which is consistent with all the other highway commercial zones that we have along Route 46 and Route 10. That 25-foot setback. So that green space will be maintained along the frontage with the exception of access drives. In this plan, the only access that is proposed is from Waterview Boulevard via a signalized accessing the property, plus an off-ramp, a one-way ingress movement off of Route 46. This plan will be part of the settlement agreement, as well as the ordinances will reflect that no access is to be gained from Intervale Road, to make sure that that's maintained and integrated. As far as the slopes, and I know people have been referring to the knoll of the actual site. The knoll area is predominantly up in this upper area of the site, and the highest point is approximately where I'm motioning right now in the northern area of the property. What this arrangement of open space and minimum dimensions from Intervale Road as well as the open space parcel does, it does maintain that upper knoll area of the tract. And it maintains the side slopes that everyone appreciates and can see along Intervale Road as you look up the slope. So it will maintain the slopes plus the trees in that area, which we thought that was very important to bring to the table and identify. In addition to that, I just wanted to touch on some of the other setbacks. There is about a 210-foot distance of setback from Intervale Road to the closest building, giving it a significant distance away from the roadway. The building setback from the R3 zone will be 525 feet with all of the setback requirements of this plan from the adjacent R3 zone. So that's almost 2 football fields in length as far as that setback distance. So with that, I'd like to also just again round back to the discussion of the fiscal impacts. We prepared a fiscal impact analysis based upon the proposal of both the 666 unit plan as well as the proposed commercial development application. Under the 666 unit plan, it would have 134 affordable units, again, as the mayor pointed out a moment ago, approximate residents of about 1,300 residents. We equate using what's called the Rutgers CUPR analysis for the number of school-age children that would be realized from a multifamily development of this type, 4 stories and with the type of open space that's proposed, of about 156 school-age children, public school-age children. And so that is the number that the school system would have to absorb. When we look at the taxes associated with the facility, and it's based on rents of the various units as well as prevailing rents within the township, we equated a deficit of $326,000 to the township after expenses. So therefore, that's not just the taxation, it's the actual deficit of additional monies needed in order to deal with the expenses coming from that development. In addition to that, the public schools will be impacted by a $950,000 deficit, and that's after expenses as well. So it's a total of $1,276,000 a year of deficit with that plan. Obviously, that's a worst-case scenario, but yet it's a very real plan from the standpoint of what we are dealing with in the courts. And it's something, as a professional planner, we are going to the mat to try to work on that plan. But that I will tell you, though, that 666 units may not be the final plan, but easily 450 units could be developed there. And the reason why I say that is that the site does have access to major highways, major roadways. You know that the park and ride facility is across the street for access. What we're dealing with as a professional planner and reviewing the affordable housing requirements, the courts are assigning special masters. The special masters are professional planners. They look at the same issues that we look at. And what I would be remiss in saying is that a plan that would be close to about 450,000 would be the plan that I think a court master would arrive at, based upon what the site can utilize, what it can provide as far as access, the amount of steep slope cut, things of that nature. Because as you can see, there's much more cut in this plan than there is in this. So with that plan, about what we estimated about 450 residential units, it would be about 90 affordable units, again, 883 residents, 106 school-age children, public school-age children. The township would be at a deficit for expenses of $220,000. The public schools would be at a deficit of $640,000, even under that more appropriate plan, we'll call it. So there would be a total of about $860,000 a year, almost $861,000 of expenses to the municipality as a result. Residential typically has these types of fiscal impacts associated with them. Unless, in fact, if it's a mixed use, but that's not what they would be proposing in this issue. The proposed settlement plan, just real quickly, with the 153,510 square feet of retail, again, estimated residents are 0. A number of school-age children are 0. Estimated number of jobs based upon certain multipliers that we look at is approximately 260 jobs within that facility. In addition to that, the township would gain, after expenses from police, fire, and other activities, of about $99,000. Public schools would gain $401,000 with no expenses. So that would be a total of $481,000 a year. In addition to that, something else to consider is that due to the inspection and other things that go on with development, if the commercial development was in fact approved or recommended, it would realize an additional sewer and water connection fees of about $740,000, just due to the development size itself. In addition to that, the Housing Trust Fund, there still would be a development fee for the non-residential development on the property to finance our Housing Trust Fund for building affordable housing elsewhere. And that's something that we're still going to have to deal with. It would be to the order of $566,000 of additional funds to our Housing Trust Fund. That enables us to renovate, rehabilitate homes that need rehabilitation. It allows us for other areas for where we can possibly do some infill development for affordable housing and not this larger scale type of development. And so with that, I just wanted to quickly talk about the ordinance that we would conceive as part of the settlement agreement. And at this point, I think I'll go through that. Okay. Basically, what we would do is have a special zone overlaying this area. And it would not be an overlay zone. We would rezone the tract to an RCR zone, just for the tract. In that tract, we would have a minimum acreage of 10.63 acres as part of the plan. And that would be provided in the ordinance. It would have to have that minimum. In addition to that, we would spell out the various square footages and maximum square footages of certain buildings. So that would be identified. Excuse me. We'd have the permitted uses would be retail. There is a bank that's proposed as part of the facility in the center of the site. We would also permit public open space and recreation uses. But one of the things that's been talked about, and I wanted to identify this for the public, is that we're seeking this for passive recreation. What passive recreation means is that it would not be a formalized field. This is an area that I don't think would be conducive to that, but that we would seek it as a passive recreation piece. So possibly with some trails through that open space area. We are looking at also the possibility of connectivity of this open space through the adjacent open space features all the way out towards the Bevqua tract, where there is currently recreation facilities. There will be accessory uses. We would talk about specific height restrictions of no more than 40 feet. What that does, as far as the height restrictions, is it would limit the impacts that a building could have on adjacent properties. What we're trying to preserve and be cognizant of is the needs and view sheds that are currently existing from Forest Drive. By the fact that the site slopes up to the knoll and this building and site will be tucked behind the knoll, it presents a natural berm, in essence, from a design perspective, that blocks this level of development from adjacent residential areas. So it establishes a natural buffer. We'll also be touching on frontage requirements, minimum buffer requirements as well. Parking requirements, which are very similar to our current parking standards. The minimum dimension for the open space would actually be established by the ordinance. And I won't go through all the details, but then we'll have additional design standards associated with the overall design of the site itself. This is something that I know, just as a professional planner, some of you may be familiar with Whole Foods. They have very strict standards as to how their buildings look and how they're maintained. What may not be aware to the general public is that they also have strict standards for who actually are the tenants adjacent to them. And they also call for architectural standards. We are actually specifically identifying specific architectural treatments of the building. There shall be certain fenestrations of the building, sidewalks, streetscape improvements along the sidewalk for greater pedestrian connectivity, specific landscape treatments of the parking areas as well as buffers. In addition to, we're calling for special landscape treatments for any disturbance they do of the side slope areas or grading areas. So that's, again, another part of the standards. Very, very extensive standards as far as buffer requirements and what planting goes into those areas as well. The one thing that they are working in this latest plan is to reduce, again, that cut into the slope. They are, though, raising the parking area from the earlier plans that some may have seen. What that will have associated with it is some retaining walls along the frontage of the property. And that's where what I mentioned earlier, that 25-foot setback, is a requirement that we're seeking to make sure that we have appropriate landscaping in front of any of those retaining walls. So again, that really summarizes the bulk of the overall standards that are being considered. And so at this point, unless I've missed anything, I would hand it back to the council.
I think that you want
We're
to
going
go
to,
for
yeah.
agreement.
All right, at this time, we're going to entertain a motion to open up the public hearing on this matter and this matter only. You'll be given 3 minutes. When you come up, please state your name and address and sign in.
Motion.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Paluso, seconded by Mr. Valori. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Mr. Valori.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Dave Kaplan, 263 Intervale Road. I'm not here to talk about this project specifically because I can't, because of my position on the zoning board. But I do want to thank the council for their efforts. I've been in touch with several council members over the past few months, and quite frankly, going back even longer than that. And several of them have shown an unbelievable care for the residents of this neighborhood. And you know who you are, and I kind of feel like this is going to be my opportunity to publicly thank you. There have been instances through this series of events, and look, I've been doing this since 2005, and I haven't always felt listened to over the years. I felt ignored over the years, and several of the council members in recent times have absolutely been the antithesis of someone who ignores constituents. And you've restored my faith in politics, quite frankly, and I commend you because I know you've got a tough decision to make. I wouldn't want to be sitting in your seat tonight, but whatever your decision is, I will respect it because I know that you've listened more than anyone has ever listened to me as a resident of Parsippany. So thank you for everything you've done over the years.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicholas Homiak, Lake Hiawatha. I don't think the community's been served because this property could have been saved if we were in conformance, the Highlands Regional Master Plan. I'd like to see an overlay, a land use utility map overlaid on that. I'd like to know which knoll. Is it the 380-foot, the 360-foot knoll? I'd like to know, here, 90-page report on that landscape. 90-page report. Aquifer recharge, community environmentally subzone. All these things would be possible. Would be possible if this governing body can actually conform to the Highlands Regional Master Plan, that the developers wouldn't be able to cut corners. And I say you have all the material that COA is an obligation, not a threat. And this landscape is not suitable for any of these developments. None of them. And you could play the hand in court and you could probably win. So I had nothing better to do with my time, so you have some rules here that COA has to obey when it comes to environmental sensitivity. So if you're interested, and there's an application here to go back into conformance again. That property could have been put on a checklist and it could have been put aside. It could have been extremely scrutinized to make sure that a balance was kept between natural resource protection and development. Because we all have to drink water. You keep on paving over these aquifer recharge areas. I guess we're going to have to go to Whole Foods to get bottled water. Yeah, I'm leaving this here for the council, and this I'm going to keep. This is a 90-page report that you can use to tell RD to get lost, because they've been threatening us and changing their minds ever since. And what did we do? Pride in Parsippany? Pride in Parsippany? I don't want to conform to the regional master plan, Mr. DiPiero. Well, your dreams will come true. You're going to have another ribbon to cut at the Whole Foods supermarket. Because it's not all about money. It's about quality of life, and it's about living in balance. And this community is not doing either. Read your own master plans. Read your own master plans, your policies and goals. Don't even bother having a planning board. Just let the developers move in and do whatever they want. I forgot your book. I'm going to keep this unless you want it.
Mary Przicki, 273 Marcella Road. You know, the developer, when he wrote the letter on March 18th, 2013, and said, in essence, I will beat you, he certainly did. I mean, the plan, between the two plans, you know which one you're going to pick, which one you are almost forced to pick. And that's what developers seem to do. They're good at it. But when you do make this settlement and you do make this ordinance, it better be airtight. Because I can tell you from past experience going back to the Prudential track, when, oh yes, we were going to get the best of everything, and when the last 2 office buildings were going to be built, we were going to get an overpass for over 287 onto 287 North, so that we wouldn't be bothered with all of that congested traffic which we have. Then we go to the Forge Pond area, and Parkside Development and Forge Pond developers.
You have to stick to this.
All right, I'm telling you that the agreements that you people make with developers are dragged on and dragged on, and they're not complied with. And this one better be airtight. Right? You better cross your T's and dot your I's. Because the way I look at it, it's always the same for Parsippany. It's sue, settlement, and we get screwed.
Hi, good evening. Tracy Marnier, 18 Forest Drive. What I got out of here tonight was we have immunity until April of 2017.
16.
16, okay. I also understand Whole Foods called and said if they don't get into this development, they're going into the Pathmark, which to me means RD is wetting their pants, because if Whole Foods falls through, they're going to lose their biggest contributor here. So to me, the council has time to wait until April to find out how many affordable housing units Parsippany actually needs, because if it's not going to happen here, it's going to happen to some other part of the township, and you guys are going to be going through this all over again. So if this is ultimately the state-of-the-art facility it's going to be, if Whole Foods goes to Pathmark, let them. Somebody else will come in.
Curtis Hardberg, 85 Red Gate Road. Mr. Smith, I have a question. Are there any 4-story apartments in Parsippany?
4-story apartments existing. Yes, I believe there are some. Brookside, thank you.
That's the only one?
It's, among others, remember the building up on the hill next to Route 10?
Yes.
That is many stories.
Okay. My other question was, you're saying it would be, say, 400 and what, 2-bedroom?
406.
What's the standard for 2-bedroom versus 1-bedroom when something like this is?
Ed, why don't you let him ask all of his questions, and then you can answer them at the end.
Just ask the questions and he'll
I
answer
want to
you.
know the standard between 1- and 2-bed apartments when something like this is approved. I want to know why they would be able to go to 4-story just automatically, when most of everything in town is 2. You're saying that they could have those 15 buildings on 26 acres, 25 units per acre. The apartment complex I work at, we have 21 acres, and it's 12 apartments per acre. Does not make sense. It's getting doubled. Why would it be allowed to be doubled? I don't know. We were told by the town when we built the apartments, we can only have 20% 2-bedrooms because of the school system. Why would they be allowed to go to 50 or 60? You can answer this.
What happens is that,
Okay.
what happens is that when you get involved with affordable housing, there's a requirement for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, okay? Because of their rules and their ratios that they have assigned. In addition to that, you had asked about, and I'm not sure I understood your question, regarding the 406 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom. The differences between the two is actually what they're proposing in the plan. That's where they're coming up with that number.
But don't we have the right to tell them how many 2 bedrooms versus the school system, which is what's been done in the past by this board?
Not when it's involving affordable housing.
That would only be the 120 units.
No, it has to
The
be within
400
the
are
time.
not affordable housing.
I'm sorry, I'll let you finish.
I'm sorry.
But it has to do with the fact that you look at the entirety of the development, the density of the development, is the site suitable for that level of development? As I mentioned a moment ago, I'm not so certain 666 units is, but I would be remiss if I said that 450 was not. Because when you look at the number of stories, like you've been talked about, and I agree that there's an issue with the 4-story buildings. There's also an issue with the amount of disturbance on the site. So those are things that we would be looking to work with the courts on. But I'll tell you that 450 units is something that I think is reasonable on the plan. And even with that number of units, we're in the substantial fiscal deficit.
Intervale Gardens is across the street. It's 21 acres, and there's only 244 units. What was making them get more than what my boss was allowed to get?
Because they look at whether or not the site can carry it. And that would be
So they
something
looked at whether our site could carry it.
Understood. That's where we would be working that out for the courts. The courts are also going to be looking at, if I can finish, is the amount of vacant land you have.
I think that between you and the developer, you're just adding all kinds of extra into that plan to blackmail this group.
No.
And I'm not really so against the plan, but it sounds like blackmail. I understand that.
I just
The
represent-
numbers are the developer's numbers.
I understand the 666 units, but I'll tell you that the 450 units is not far from reality because of what the court master is looking at as far as the site suitability and the density that we developed in that tract, especially with the frontage on the 46.
Whole Foods picks up the phone.
Time's up. You can still continue to answer the questions, but time's up.
I'm a little hyper.
Ed, can I ask you a question? Ed, can I ask you one question, though? And this is probably important since you brought up the apartments. Most of the apartments in Parsippany were built in 1964 to 19. Most of the apartments were built from 1964 before they actually changed the way apartments or complexes are even taxed. But there was no COA at that time. So, and the apartments used to be based on the value of their properties until 1980, until you had Helmsley versus the Township of Fort Lee and vice versa, Parsippany Commons versus Parsippany Troy Hills, and that's when it all changed. But there was no COA at the time.
Yes, there.
There still is affordable housing.
There's no COA.
All right. Okay. No. Okay.
Gregory Waller, 7 Coral Drive, Parsippany, New Jersey. I just basically had a quick question. So basically, I came in a little bit late. Basically, there's 2 plans. There's the one plan with affordable housing. Use the microphone, please.
It is just begin to.
So I have 2.
No. Just got to get a new microphone. These microphones, we got to get.
How about now? Yeah, there you go. Okay, good. So I came in a little bit late. So basically, my question is, what you're telling us, there's 2 plans basically on the table. One has affordable housing, is that right? And one is all strictly commercial. Maybe I missed it. Of the commercial plan, how many parking spaces? I mean, how much traffic expecting in something like that? It seems like we have to choose something. So how many parking spots are in that one?
There's
686 parking spaces.
Okay. And Yeah, that was basically my question there. So there's only one access road from Waterville, you were saying, correct?
There'll be one access road, a full signalized access road, plus an off-ramp from Route 46, but no access to Intervale.
Okay, and as far as the height restrictions, what is the height restrictions on the building as they are right now in the planning board?
Oh, within the zone?
For that second plan to the left.
Oh,
That would be 40 feet. That would be 40 feet. It's not before the planning board yet. It's just really for discussion tonight.
And Greg, you were asking about how many car trips.
Oh, hold on.
You want to answer?
I don't know what the question even was.
Okay, yes, I understand. There was a question regarding how many car trips would be generated as a result of this proposal. That's not something that I currently have in order to give you, but I can give you the number of parking spaces and things of that nature. The traffic engineers that would be involved during the planning board review would definitely have that information, and we would make sure it comply with any of the access requirements that the current code has of the township, as well as the DOT, because they would need an access permit from DOT for accessing the site.
Ed, can you expand also upon the Intervale Road? I had indicated that I want to ensure there's restrictions that traffic cannot go onto Intervale Road, that it's in perpetuity and a deed restriction, that's a buffer. Can you go into that a little bit?
Correct. What we've identified is there's a maximum area of disturbance along Intervale Road, at least at this buffer area. There is a need for some grading easements associated with the corner at Intervale Road intersection with Route 46. But that the ordinance would have very specific standards in it saying no access to Intervale Road. When an ordinance has that, as well as a settlement agreement, any changes to that or seeking of adjustments to that would go back to the settlement agreement and back to the courts. It would not be something that a board could overrule. They couldn't grant that deviation because it's part of a settlement agreement.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm John Pritchard. I live at 11 Glen. Now, I understand that this project that's on the right could be built regardless of our ordinances in this town. Is that right? By a court ordering us to meet some kind of affordable standard.
Let them answer. Yeah. Ask your questions.
Because that case?
Do you have any other questions, sir? or-
Yes, I do.
Why don't you ask the questions? and we'll-
Okay, well,
We don't want to use up
if
any of your time.
all of our ordinances are irrelevant when it comes to affordable housing, then if we create some open space here, and this body says that it can't be used for any purposes in the future, then this part that's green here, which is all open, and according to our town ordinances, in perpetuity, can never be developed. We should expect that if a judge sometimes says, you have open land here, then this can become entirely Mount Laurel. And there is nothing that this body could do to stop it, I think that's right, isn't it?
No, I'll address that. Finish your questions.
Okay, because what this ordinance is passed by this body can never overcome what a judge does with affordable housing. If the judge says, you have open space here, you may believe that according to your ordinances that you can prevent this from being developed. We should expect that in the future, if a judge believes it's appropriate and there's a special master appointed, the special master can say, build affordable housing here, and the special master and the judge can say, and you have also exits onto Intervale Road.
You have any further questions, sir?
No, that's it.
Okay. That is not correct. The rezoning of the property in green for open space is merely an interim step. What will happen as part of the settlement, as I indicated earlier, is that once the developer receives all of its governmental approvals for the Whole Foods Center, short of a building permit, then a closing will occur in which the township will acquire that property in green and own it. And they will be acquiring it with open space money and a deed restriction. So no judge could or would ever order affordable housing to be built on that site. As I've indicated in previous meetings, really the only way for the township to fully protect itself with respect to the development of this property is to either buy it, because that would settle the issue, especially with open space money, or to settle. And this proposal does both. So your concern, while I understand and appreciate it, is not a valid concern. Once the township acquires that property, it will stay open space forever.
But isn't there a constitutional issue that, under the state constitution, they can say,
it's not property that is available for development any more than Smithfield would be available for development. Once the property is acquired with open space money, that property is off the radar. It's off the market. It's not available. It would never be ordered, ever. It's forever protected as open space. And that's frankly one of the main benefits of this proposal, is it permanently protects that 10.63 acres and could be more in the future from ever being developed once it's acquired by the township.
Hi, Diana McElroy, 37 Intervale Road. So we have the 666 plan and the other plan. So it's really, we get to pick the lesser of the two evils. I'd like to know who has spoken to Whole Foods on this panel? Like, who's actually had the conversations with them? Is it just you, Mr. Indochino?
I have spoken with representatives of Whole Foods.
So you're our go-between, right? The most mistrusted man in Parsippany is our go-between. You brought us the developers, thank you. And now you bring us another plan that we don't want. Thank you. I have a quick question. I want to know, just off the cuff, you mentioned some hiking trails. Who's going to build those trails? How are they going to stop people from going to people's houses? Are there going to be trees cut down for the trails? I think that's a question for you.
Sure. There are no plans yet for the trails right now. And in fact, what we would do and what we've done in other parks like this is that we would work around the existing trees wherever possible. In addition to that, there are existing fencing and things of that nature that would help prevent intrusion onto other properties.
Hey, just real quickly, I'm glad you kind of cued in on it. In regards to the buffer on the most narrow part on Intervale Road there, I'm looking at the map on an angle here.
Yes.
Are those trees that are in place now going to stay as preserved and obviously create a buffer so those folks that live closer to that area right there wouldn't obviously be infringed upon with that development, say if it went through?
That's correct. What is actually proposed as part of the plan is a minimum dimension of where they can actually, a maximum dimension of where they can disturb into that buffer area.
And what is that usually?
That distance is about 15 feet, but the remaining green space would be approximately 93 or a little bit close to about 100 feet.
So those trees wouldn't be disturbed in there?
No, what people are seeing right now is from the edge of the roadway pavement, the trees that run up the slope, there's actually an additional 25 feet of trees beyond the edge of the top of slope that people see along Intervale that would actually be preserved. And the intent of that, if you remember some of the earlier discussions, is that we were talking about at one point a 75-foot distance. That would only bring you to the top of that slope area. So we wanted to make sure we preserve trees beyond that area in order to preserve that view.
Okay, thank you.
Which was my best.
Francine Naiman, Woodglen Way. I wanted to know how they came up with the number 666. Is that a coincidence or that's scary?
That was, yeah, I think that was kind of in your...
Okay. And the other thing is, how come there's no open space for the residential area, but there is open space there, the greenery for the...
Oh, that's a slab.
Yeah, it's a maximized plan. It's showing you what the maximum development could be, but what I didn't point out is actually what they're proposing is a recreation feature within the center area, sort of a clubhouse with some play areas, things of that nature. So they are trying to show at least an idea of a recreation area.
Buffer like that?
No.
Okay.
No,
And
it
the
would
other
not.
question is, you said that it was not put before the planning committee. I don't know if there was something when a gentleman came up that these, I don't know if I misheard it or whatever.
I can clarify that. No, this has not gone before the planning board yet. It would
None of
have to
this.
first start here through the settlement agreement before it could even be submitted, because otherwise it would be entirely a use variance.
So it's either that or that. That's basically what is at the table
Those are
right
the
now.
options
Those
that
are the
we discussed.
options right now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello. It seems to me
Please
we
state your
have
name and
to-
address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Karen Savis, 14 Fox Run, Parsippany. It seems to me we don't have much of a choice. We're backed into a corner, just like Councilman DePiero said we were going to be. Each application gets worse. It's getting worse. This is the best one I think we're going to get. I don't think it's going to get any better. $3.5 million in open space money? That's a lot of money. I don't have a tot park in my neighborhood. So if this gets voted down and this $3.5 million open space money is still around, there's a lot of neighborhoods that could use some open space in ours. We can't afford this affordable housing. Our taxes are going to go through the roof. Everybody's already moving out of Jersey. We're going to be moving out of Parsippany. I'm sorry this land is going to be developed, but somebody's going to do it. I've lived in this town my whole life. I've seen it. I've seen it all over. I'm sorry it happens, but it does. And we have to live with it. So when you make your vote tonight, please remember, don't just make it on a certain group of people. There are everybody in Parsippany that does not want this tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Matter where.
Yeah.
Pat Patacha, 182 Hawkins Avenue. I've been sitting in on this meeting since day one when this started. I remember last year being told by Mr. Inglesino I should have came to court and watched him win that case for us. Thank you so much for that. How much did that cost us? Good faith, you say? There's no good faith in any of this. They want us to pay $3.5 million? They should give it to us if it ends up. Is there a choice? To me, no. There isn't a choice. You don't have to take one or the other. Stop being threatened by people. Grow something, guys. Okay? I'm sorry, but this is the reality of it today. It's disgusting. I have no idea what we're paying this attorney for. I really do not. We have paid him to win a case that is now back in our face. We are being threatened with low-income housing. As a town, how does anybody accept that? Who's going to be the traffic engineers that are going to tell us about the traffic? Like they do at the Board of Adjustments, they let the developers tell you instead of using our own traffic advisors? God almighty. I mean, seriously, this is a sad state Parsippany is being put in. We have an attorney that is supposed to represent the township who is more involved in land use laws and developers than any town I've ever met or seen or heard of. You know, I'm really upset
said, and I'm sure you can tell it. Okay, because I'm sitting here right now fighting vertigo, trying to keep my eyes on you people. I came out for this meeting specifically for this part of this meeting. You can threaten? Mike, if you don't have to fight you anymore, give it up then. I want people that are going to show that they are
30
fighting
seconds.
for Parsippany, not people giving it away. Do your due diligence, boys, because there's more behind this than you know.
Good evening. Ken Urema, 41 Winding Way, Parsippany. Just one simple question, I think. What would prevent, say, what would prevent R&D from, say, 2 months from now, after, let's assume this plan is moving forward, to start making unreasonable demands or demands? Now, the deal is already gone with Pathmark. Pathmark's out of there. Whole Foods is counting on certain things, everything's done. And now RD comes back to us and says, you know what, we want this or we want that, and we need a little bit more of this. And if you don't give it to us, our client, Whole Foods, is going to go to the Pathmark place because it's still open. So if you don't give us what we want, you know what, guys? Whole Foods gone, and we're looking at Plan A. That's where we're going to go. So, you know, they're going to hold us hostage. Is that a possibility that they? I don't perceive that it's possible to put an agreement so airtight that they could never turn the screws a little bit tighter, inch by inch, trying to get a little bit more out of this town, and basically saying, you don't give us what we want, Whole Foods is moving out because they don't like the deal what Parsippany's giving them, and here we are. You answer that, please?
Yeah, I'll answer. I can't predict any more than you can or anybody else can predict what somebody else will do. What we know is that RD Realty has expressed strongly a preference for the Whole Foods project as opposed to going forward with multifamily housing on the property. And so I have to believe that we negotiated hard on this agreement. The last few days, we spent a lot of time on this agreement. Anything's possible. Nothing's to prevent them from coming back and saying they want to change. Nothing requires the municipality to accept that change. But I think we have a fully negotiated agreement. I would be very surprised if they came back and tried to renegotiate. I can't stop them if that's what they want to do. But again, they've expressed a strong interest in the Whole Foods plan, and they have agreed to this agreement. They haven't signed it, but we have concluded negotiations with their lawyer as of this afternoon, and you know, this is the agreement that was reached.
Counsel, you would agree, though, there is a possibility that that could happen if and frankly, I don't think their reputation is that great. The way they've treated this town.
Right.
So, I mean, there is clearly a possibility that if they so choose somewhere along the line to say, we want a little bit more of this, we want a little bit more of that, and you got to give it to us because if Whole Foods is out of here, guess what? That is a real possibility, I think. Your crystal ball is no clearer than anybody else's.
Is it a possibility? Sure. It's a possibility, but I don't, you know, I'm the one who conducted the negotiations, and I don't foresee that happening.
You feel they're acting in good faith?
Well, I think that they feel as though they got an agreement that works for them.
30
and I think
seconds.
that all things considered, you know, the council will have to consider whether or not we have an agreement that works for us under the circumstances. There was a lot of give and take. So I don't foresee that happening, but I can't tell you it's not impossible.
Mr. Inglis, if that were to happen, if we sign this agreement, and Whole Foods were to try to pull that on us, wouldn't we already own the 10.6
Depends when they.
acres?
It depends when they try to pull it. If they tried to pull that on you before the closing, you know, then there would be a default under the agreement. But one of the provisions in the agreement that we put in there, to Ms. Pazicki's point, being airtight, is that you know they don't get a building permit on the development piece until you close title on the open space piece. So you can't, they're not going to be able to get what they want and then not give us what we bargained for. They don't get the building permit until we close on the open space piece, and that's provided in the agreement, and that's a provision that we felt was in the agreement. Yes, that's in the agreement that's before the council.
Go ahead, sir.
It will be available to the public.
Thank you. So I hear this number of 20% affordable housing. I hear that we don't have enough affordable housing in the rest of Parsippany as it is right now. Does anybody know, can anybody tell me how short we are on affordable housing, excluding this? If you don't build this, how are we short? How much are we short?
Do you have any other questions besides that?
Yes.
Okay. If you want to ask all your questions so we don't use up your time to answer those, and we'll answer them all at the end.
Okay. So the question I have is, if they only put 20% affordable housing, is that going to make any dent on the rest of our affordable housing requirement? And if it doesn't, then what would the profit margin be if they were going to do this and we tell them that we only zone it for affordable housing?
Can't do it. Can't do it.
Then what would the profit margin be?
Is that all your questions, sir?
That's all the questions.
Okay. How short are we is a question that cannot be answered precisely at this point in time, because we're engaged in a litigation process that will arrive at that number, as I indicated earlier. We have, there's experts for RD Realty and for the Fair Share Housing Center who have provided their reports indicating that Parsippany's deficit of affordable housing is upwards of 2,100 units. There's supposed to be a 1,000-unit mercy rule. We'll see how that plays out. And we are awaiting a report from our consultant, eConsult, which we should have by mid-December or by the end of December. It's due in court by January 15th, which presumably, hopefully, will provide a lesser number. I don't know what the number is, and then the judge will have to make a determination based upon the expert reports and whatever other evidence the judge considers. So we don't know what the number is, but I think it's fair to say that it's going to be certainly higher than it is today. And, how much higher, we really don't know. What I can tell you is, and the mayor alluded to this in his comments, is that if we settle with RD Realty in accordance with this plan, it will reduce the vacant land available for development in Parsippany. And that will help Parsippany reduce its overall number, because vacant and available land is a factor that is utilized in determining what a municipality's fair share obligation will be. So that is another, to the extent the goal is to minimize the affordable housing obligation, then this settlement will help that goal, because you're taking 26 acres or so of developable property out of commission, off the available vacant land list.
Now you have to, sir, if you want to ask a question, you have to come up to the mic, okay?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Robert Iyer Kane. I am the 44-year resident in this town, 26 years as zoning board member, and for about the last 15 as chairman. I've seen many, 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 many of these cases sit on the other side of that border there, or what I'll call it. I'm not going to comment on the application specifically, because the affordable housing application will be coming before my board in a couple of weeks. But I do want to say, first of all, can we
afford a new set of...
Yeah, we can.
26 years I've been dealing with these damn microphones. Wow. Anyway, I'm not a NIMBY. I worry about every square mile of this town when I sit on the zoning board. Whether it's Greystone, Hiawatha, Tabor, and I think I know a little bit more about the zoning in this town than most of the people in this room. I want to say something. I think you people have to treat these people in a better fashion. There's no such thing as personal attacks allowed, okay? Done, finished, okay? I would not put up with this as chairman of the zoning board when people are making personal attacks at me. And for Ms. Petracci, we do have a traffic consultant. We use him for every application. He's our employee.
You can come up, man.
I didn't touch it.
I think it's habit.
Nancy Brighton, 24 Maplewood Drive. I'm also the chair of the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee for Parsippany. I had a question. If, given this plan and we're sort of in negotiations on things, is it possible as part of this settlement and everything that we can negotiate some more stringent environmental studies or review to include possibly an archaeological survey, soil testing, sort of an understanding of some of the issues with the water recharge area that you've all heard, so that we perhaps, if there's an issue or anything, that we could put the residents at ease, and Whole Foods, who's supposed to be interested in a lot of this stuff, could better design something if there is something there, or if it turns out that we probably are not going to have an impact. We don't know.
Good question. Those kinds of detailed site-specific analysis are done as a part of the planning board process, and that would follow the normal course as every application. The township has a checklist of requirements that the applicant has to provide, and they're going to have to satisfy those requirements. And folks are obviously free to come to the planning board proceedings and raise site-specific issues that are appropriately vetted and reviewed by the planning board, and that would be the time to raise those kinds of issues.
John Beeler, 51 Intervale. I'll sign in after I'm done speaking. I'd like to thank most of you for your continued service to the community. I don't envy you. It's not an easy thing. Looking at these plans, I'm of two minds, and between the brainwashing and the bullying and the tainted process since day one, it's enough to make an honest man run for politics, which I attempted to do. I still, having walked a mile in your shoes as an honest politician, wearing out shoes, myself knocking on doors, I realize it's not easy to be an honest politician. So I know many of you weigh this decision heavily. And I've been asked what I thought about this. And like I said, I'm of two minds. If I look at these, I think, well, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. And part of me says, you know what, if option A, option B, what about option C, which isn't really displayed here? And I know that if I were deciding this, I really couldn't, if I can't decide it myself, or would have such difficulty deciding it myself, I would want to at least, the people who are most impacted by this decision would be consulted. And with a gun to the head of this decision needing to happen a week after or 2 weeks after the election, funny how the timing on this stuff, and then with barely any notice on a rainy Tuesday night, funny how this whole process has worked like that, that I would at least if I were a representative of the people, I would want to hear from those people most impacted along Forest Drive, to see how they really felt about that. And not all of them are present here tonight. I see many of them that are not, because I know them. I've gotten to know them through this process. So it's a shame the gun's to our head, and I wish I could give you a better indication of how everyone felt and how rolling over for developers or getting ill advice on matters could not be in our best interest. But I wish you the best, and I thank you for your service. It's not easy being an honest politician.
Kevin Brancato, 14 Celtic Way. While I can respect you've got a very small number of your total taxpayers here from Intervale who are most impacted physically by this, you have another consideration, which the rest of the taxpayers in this town. And to the no votes, I really, really take that no vote as a vote against the rest of the taxpayers. You have always said that you are here for the taxpayers in this town. There are more of us than there are in the Intervale section, and I do respect what you've tried to do for them. But I would take your no vote as a vote against the bulk of the taxpayers in this town. Thank you.
Ann Chaton, 30 Forest Drive. I have two questions. One is, what type of hours are we looking at? Is there going to be like, they have to, these stores, whatever's going to be in there, it's going to have to be closed by like 11 o'clock at night, Sunday through Saturday? Are they going to have extended hours on the weekends? That's what I'd like to get an idea of, what kind of hours we're talking about. The other thing I'd like to know is that turnaround that's existing now where all the trees are. I'd like to know who owns that, because we're talking about putting retention basins in that. And then if that's not their property but the town's property, who's responsible for maintaining those basins going forward once they're in? Those are my two questions. The other thing is the no vote, the comment that was just made. My concern is this shows that we run scared when big developers come in and threaten affordable housing. If we just say, we're going to go for this, and any other space that's left in the town, this can happen to us again very easily, and they'll just come in, threaten, and then we're going to run scared. So we don't want to set a precedent of, we're afraid of affordable housing, and we'll do what we think is a lesser evil, which could be harmful in the future. Because if this isn't successful, it's just empty ratables, like a lot of the empty ratables we have now. We have a lot of empty office buildings that developers can come in and say, I want to turn into retail malls, because that's more profitable now, and I'm entitled to have a profit like these people. So I'm always concerned about the precedents that are being set when these things are put into play. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, excuse me. The hours of operation would be the common hours of operation that any business would have currently within the community. We have not talked about restricting those hours of operations. But as far as the turnaround area, as I understand it, it's NJDOT owns that area. And that would be something that would be required of the developer to negotiate with them in order to get that open space or that area for the stormwater basin. As far as continued maintenance, they would be required to deal with that. That's oftentimes the planning board makes that a requirement of any approval.
Thank you. Good evening. Russell Arnold, 3 Brook Court. I guess we're at the end here, it seems like. I'd like to thank the people on the council that have supported us, and those who haven't, a spirited fight, I guess it's best to be said. I want to say that to my community members, that if there was somebody on another side of town where a development or something was going in where they didn't want it because it directly impacted their part of the community, I want them to know that I would be there for them, to come down here and to fight for them, okay? And that it's just not us against the town council. We appreciate what they do, but we're fighting for our piece of the community. Thank you.
You can come up.
Hi, Michelle Toscano, 79 Forest Drive. I just wanted to know if the people that are within 200 feet of the property had to be noticed.
No, not tonight.
No.
They will be noticed, if this matter progresses to the planning board, they'll be noticed for that, but not for this evening.
Okay.
Okay, see no one else come forward, entertain a motion to close.
Hate to prolong your meeting, Council.
There's always one in the group.
Vinnie Schindel, 3FX Downey Court. I'd just like to make a comment, if I may. I don't know how long most of the citizens are here that live in Parsippany, but I can remember starting to come up in Parsippany in the early 60s. If you drove along Route 46 near South Bevick Road, there was no Troy Hill Shopping Center. Go a little further up, there was no Arlington Shopping Center. And I seen them build the first apartment buildings. And I thought they were crazy. I said, who the hell would move up here in the woods and live in an apartment building? What I'm alluding to here tonight is there were trees on all that property. It was all virgin land. And in the name of progress, they build a lot of things that we don't think about today that we utilize for our everyday lives. I'd just like to reach out to the fellow taxpayers here in Parsippany and ask them to cool down and try and understand that where their houses today are, there were once trees. Trees were cut down to build homes. Trees were cut down to build the shopping centers we're arguing about. And nobody wanted these things in their backyard. In the name of progress, if you will, I talk to my grandchildren and I tell them different things of when I was young, that we used to listen to a radio. And I still remember on Monday night at 7:30, we listened to the Lone Ranger. They think I'm crazy. They said, how could you sit there and listen to a radio? You know, didn't you have TV? No, we didn't have TV. All I'm asking my fellow citizens is to consider the thought that anybody who owns a piece of land has the right, to a degree, to build on it, excuse me. And that this outfit, whether we like it or we don't like it, has the right to do it.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And all I'm saying to you is just try and understand the need for people to use their own property, to use it for what they want, as long as they don't break the law and they conform to all the regulations. I thank you. Go home with that thought in mind, regardless of where you live in town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry I prolonged the meeting here. You could have closed.
That's okay.
I'll stay here all night to listen to everybody.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I'd like to add my thanks. I'm Richard Young. I live at 179 Intervale Road. I'd like to add my thanks to those of you who have worked so hard to try to do this in a way that's reasonable and balanced and looks to the future of Parsippany, and we certainly appreciate that. There are a couple of issues that I think need to be thought about very carefully. One of them has to do with the buffers along Intervale Road, which the plan in green over here has narrowed down to some number under 100 feet roughly, and has trimmed off the southern end of that. I think those buffers are terribly important because if the developer is allowed to trim the east side of that Doremus Ridge, as it's commonly called, they'll undercut the water table. The trees that are on top won't have a very bright future. So it would be really good if we could stick with what was in POD zoning, which is a minimum of 200-foot buffers surrounding the property, including on the side along Intervale. Secondly, the concept of the buffers under POD zoning, as you all know, was that that was something the developer was responsible to provide, not to be paid for, responsible to provide. And I feel very strongly that it would be most inappropriate for the Township of Parsippany to reach in its pocket and pay the developer money for something that they're required to provide under the current zoning on the Waterview Tract. Thirdly, the Waterview Tract used to be called the Dodge Tract, with about 142 acres. When it was zoned POD, the concept of that zoning was comprehensive. It was to be broken into lots, as it has been, but overall, certain amounts of land were to be kept from being developed, and other areas could have impervious surface and buildings on them. This lot, of course, is the last one that was there, and the concept behind POD zoning was, hey, if things get a little overbuilt here and a little overbuilt there, the final lot has to absorb that. It isn't each lot by itself, it's in total. So this developer is obviously very shrewd, because if they escape from POD zoning, then all of a sudden that responsibility to limit the amount of development they have disappears. You might think about that and negotiate with them on those several issues. Thank you very much.
Hi, Julie Peterson, 25 Old Parsippany Road. I'm just curious. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but I'm assuming that R&D does not own this parcel. This is all contingent. Is that correct? So who gets the 3.5 million? Bellmead or R&D?
Why don't you finish with your question?
I'm done. That's it.
Okay. RD Realty has represented in the agreement that they are a contract purchaser of the site, and they've attached a redacted copy of the contract. It's the same contract that they've had for quite some time, and they've updated their representations that that contract is still current and in full force and effect. And they also, to Ms. Pazicki's point, have an ongoing obligation to advise us and send any notices that they receive under the contract to us. In terms of how the $3.5 million will get paid, I don't know whether or not, and I envision there will be, because we discussed it, but it's still a little far out to say with certainty, that there would be a simultaneous closing in which we would pay the $3.5 million into an attorney escrow account that will be distributed, and they would do their closing at the same time, or whether or not we would close on the open space piece after RD Realty closes. I really don't know. All I do know is that we will get good and marketable title insured by a title company for that open space piece in exchange for $3.5 million.
Okay.
That much I know.
Because I do know that a lot of times when a development is contemplated, it's the people say, yeah, we'll buy it as long as you can get the permission for us to do what we want.
Well, yes. I mean, there is a contingency in there that I mean, the township's obligation under the agreement, or what the township would need to do under the agreement, is to provide the development approvals. If the township doesn't provide the development approvals, then, you know, we're not going to get the open space piece. We'd have to provide the development approvals, and that would be through the zoning and through the planning board, and they would have to get all of their governmental approvals. And then, once they get the governmental approvals, again, we would close title. And we've actually worked in the agreement, Ms. Pazicki, this is for you, Bevan, if they default, we get, and they've conceded to giving us specific performance as a right in the agreement to be able to obtain title to the property. And they don't get a building permit until we get title.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, see no one else come forward. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
Make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Stanton. Seconded by Mr. Valori. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Mr. Valori.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes. All right, at this time, entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. Paluso, seconded by Mr. Valori. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Make a motion to reconvene into open session.
Second.
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. Stanton, seconded by Mr. Valori. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Mr. Valori.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes. Mr. DePiero.
Resolution 2015-167, a resolution of Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills authorizing a settlement agreement with RD Realty LLC. Motion to approve the above resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Mr. Stanton. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero.
Before I vote, I'd like to make a statement. I've been involved in Mount Laurel for 27 years as a councilman in Parsippany. I've seen what the courts can do over the years. They have never, ever overruled an application for low-income housing. They could care less about setbacks, steep slopes, vernal ponds, wetlands, density, traffic, school children, irrelevant. They are there for low-income housing. When round one came around 27 years ago, and we went to court to fight the outrageous allocation of numbers, they broke the state into regions. Our region includes Patterson and Newark. So when they have to count the housing that's needed in our region, it includes those areas. And our numbers were very high, and we fought that for years and years in the courts. And we told the courts, listen, we have 7,000 apartments in Parsippany. We have 2 senior citizen complexes. We have high-density housing in Mount Tabor, Rainbow Lakes, Lake Hiawatha, Lake Parsippany. And we even had a trailer park at that time. The court said, what you've done in the past is irrelevant. We're looking at the needs now going forward. And they looked at the available land and said, this is your number. And we fought that number. It was unfair. We fought it for years. But the bottom line was, these courts are going to do whatever they can to favor low-income housing. I was talking to the judge during the break, and he told me, you're under a misconception here. He says, you think I am here to render fair and impartial hearings. He says, you're wrong. My job here is to enforce low-income housing. That's the fact of life. Now we get back to this tract of land. When I was on the planning board, it's almost 3 years ago now, I saw the handwriting on the wall. I saw that round 3 for low-income housing was coming along, and it was not going to be good for Parsippany. Our allocation will be somewhere between 400 units and 1,000 units of low-income housing in Parsippany. The more land that we have available, the more housing units we will be assigned. So this 26-acre tract, which is significant, if it were developed in some way, it would come off our available land and lower the amount of low-income housing we have. So I supported the development all along, not because I like the developer, but because I wanted this land to be developed as a tax rateable and not for apartments of low-income housing, which we could not afford and do not want. My meaning has been misinterpreted over the years, and now we've come to exactly where I said we would be. I predicted if you did not like the third application for that property, which is our, the first application was for a town center with a cobblestone street and a little island in the middle and little lampposts and stores and boutiques. Intervale residents, led by Dave Kaplan, were vehemently opposed to that application. So we turned it down. The second application was for townhouses, age-restricted townhouses, no school children. 6 units per acre, which is the same density we have all over town. Dave Kaplan led the fight again and opposed that development. RD Realty is the third application for that property. And you notice the choices are not getting better. I would have preferred the first application or the second. But here we are. This is the third application. But I knew we were not going to like the fourth application because I predicted almost 3 years ago the fourth application would be low-income housing. And we sat here tonight and we saw the two proposals. All right, granted, we've got some modifications on the Whole Foods tract, better than it was 3 years ago. Oh, granted, okay. But there's the two proposals I envisioned 3 years ago, and I threatened that this was going to happen. No one listened. No one paid attention. So now we see it tonight. Here we are. I vote yes.
Mr. Paluso.
I have a statement as well. One thing I didn't like about the way this has gone down is the fact that we're always up at a podium, looking at people. I'm going to do something different. Let me experience what the mic is like now. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a resident as well. And I have led the charge to try and give with the residents what they wanted. I stand down here today because I was in a gymnasium at Parsippany Hills High School twice, under hot lights, looking down at residents. I don't look down at residents because I'm a servant to you. I'm your equal. And that's why I'm coming off the podium right now. This is a very important topic that affects not only the residents of the Intervale area, it affects the residents of the Rainbow Lakes area, it affects the schooling of their children in Rainbow Lakes, and including the areas of Intervale. It affects our overall population, all of our taxpayers. We're one community, and we all work together. And when it affects one, it affects all. And looking at plans that were up here, I hear people saying that we were strong-armed. I believe we were. I believe we're giving a choice A or B. I think the choices are going to get worse. But as a steward of the taxpayers and a public servant, I'm going to have to make the decision that's best for everyone. And I want to let you know that I fought tirelessly. And a lot of residents that came up and said they appreciate our efforts, thank you, because we really have. And while I was up there, I jotted down some notes of some battles that we had behind the scenes that you may have not seen. You may have not heard. Meetings that we had with residents, hearing complaints, right up to the last hour tonight. I was on the phone with residents trying to get the pulse of the community. What do you want? What is the best thing for our community? We're always not going to make the right decisions, but we're going to make the best decisions that we can. Now, the battles that we won were economic, legal, and environmental. And I have an obligation to go through a short list. And I'm going to put in my words, not an engineer's words, not a lawyer's words, not the mayor's words or anybody else. I'm going to put it in my own words. Okay? We projected a net income of $2.5 million on this property. We'll make $712,000 in projected taxes. It's going to be RCW open space with deed restrictions. No ballparks and backyards. I made sure of that. Reduce square foot of the buildings. No big box stores. myself, our councilman here, we strove to make sure that these buildings, that the walls can't be merged. It's going to be deed restriction in perpetuity, which means that this document, that if we agree to it tonight, will be part of the zoning restriction as well. And I asked the attorney, and I made sure that it was part of the documentation. There's 3 legal actions that are going to be dismissed. 450 apartments, of which 90 are only low-income housing. Even if all the low-income housing went there, it doesn't meet our obligations. And we do have until April, but that's just when our number comes out. But regardless, we have to prevent a large amount of homes being built in that area. Those are a lot of apartments. We have over 8,200 apartments in Parsippany alone right now. And that's a most accurate number. You can check with a tax assessor, give or take. They're not going to intervene with Mount Laurel case anymore and try to increase our numbers. We made sure of that. We're withdrawing the zoning board's application of 120 apartments through this agreement. The buffers for the residents and the buffers for the Intervale Road are in place. It's 10.63 acres completely. I was there when it was 9.26. I was fighting with Mr. Kaplan for another 2 acres. We were getting additional acre. We are going to get some more acreage on it. Environmental, I'm a liaison to the Environmental Committee. You know, I would be remiss to say that I'm not going to protect our wellheads, but I preserved our steep slope, and that's important. Preserving the cemetery, preserving the wellheads, and undisturbing the wildlife. The wildlife is going to be undisturbed to the best we can. And when it comes to a recreational facility, I spoke to the administration, I spoke to Mr. Kaplan, I spoke to my fellow councilman, I said to them, listen, I said, I don't want these trees cut down, and I'm going to expect them to honor that the best they can. The fence separating the retail from the buffer, that was important to residents. I addressed that as well. Signage restricting delivery times and non-evasive lighting, that was important, that came up. I made sure they addressed that, and our fellow councilman behind me addressed that as well. No access to the Intervale Road. You heard me say tonight, you know, Mr. Stinkis, can you please reiterate about that preserved buffer right there? 260 jobs. Well, you know what, they're going to be part-time jobs, but a job is a job today, and it's a bad economy. So we need jobs. So it's a very important thing that we do. But I want to let you know that, you know, at the end of the day, I fought hard for all the residents, and I listened to all the residents of all parts of the community. And unfortunately, I have to say yes. Thank you.
Who's next?
I am when she says my name.
Oh, you
Mr. Stanton.
Okay, well, I could look at Jonathan Nelson and tell him the night in Parsippany Hills High School, when the vote came out, we looked at each other and said, you know, we're going to be back doing this again. Well, the one thing we said that night, and I'm sticking to this, is we both said the same thing, that we wanted a compromise. Am I happy with the plans? No, I'm not happy, but it's definitely a major compromise from the original plans. But at the same time, you look at the other things, whether it's going to be 666 apartments or 450 possible, I think both of the plans are real. I think our choices are, do you want the apartments or do you want the compromise to what we have? So my vote's yes.
Mr. Vluri.
Hello, everyone. Obviously, you know who I am. I'm probably the guy that likes scrapping with John Inglesino, my working colleague here, and sometimes with the mayor. And, you know, there was a lot of, how could I say, a lot of personal feelings and decisions that had to go into this. And I will tell you, there was probably times in closed session, they probably wanted to call the police on me because, you know, yes, you know, sometimes I'm strong-minded in regards to how my opinion is, and you know, I like to obviously, you know, understand my colleagues' point of view, along with obviously the mayor's and the township attorney. What I'm really disgusted of, if more than anything, is, you know, unfortunately, we have to deal with the Mount Laurel decision, which is as liberal as it could be, and really doesn't care about the folks in Parsippany here. And when that decision was obviously just introduced in March, it became the game changer in regards to our rationale of how we're going to handle this. But I'm going to go back in time a little bit. You know, I lived in the town for 30 years, and I have 3 daughters, 28, 21, and 14. But I started in Knoll Garden Apartments, and I was there for 5 years. And I grew up in Essex County, which there was high-rises and apartments everywhere. And then moving out to, obviously, here in Parsippany, I go, wow, you know, there's a lot of apartments out here, and especially a complex such as No Garden Apartments. I'm not picking on No Garden Apartments, but needless to say, it's an apartment complex that's square in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And then with my years on the Parsippany Police Department, I worked 20-plus years on the police department, and I know all the different apartment complexes in the town, and a lot of them are right in the middle of residential neighborhoods. And, you know, it starts changing the cosmetic makeup of that neighborhood. Being on the Board of Ed at one time, I was on the Board of Ed, you know, we probably have about 7,000 students in this town. And I happen to be on the one committee that deals with transportation. And I know that this school district at the time transports about 4,500 kids a day. So you have 7,000 students that are in the school district. You have about 4,500 kids get transported every day. You know, to me, there's going to be a major burden on our school district with busing issues, with traffic. These are just all reality. It's gonna come with the mix no matter what. So, you know, analyzing this, speaking to the folks in Intervale, and not just the folks in Intervale, folks throughout the whole town. Because again, there are folks that live on the other side of town that were totally supportive of, obviously, you know, you guys fighting this to the very end. But then the game changer came into play was the Mount Laurel decision. And then reality's kicking in as to, you know, we're almost forced to come down to a decision. And at the same time, we got to make rational decisions and leave our personal views sometimes to decide and say what's going to be best for the town, what's going to draw an income, what's not going to put a burden on the school district, what's not going to put a burden more on the police department, and all the other things that come along with it. But I will tell you, I'm not going to take credit for it, working with all my colleagues here, and we got pretty hot-headed many times in regards to how we're going to come up with the best project that will be as least evasive on the folks that live in Lake Intervale and even our neighbors of Mountain Lakes. And we met the one day, myself and Mr. Carifi, we met in Mr. Inglesino's office, and I know those folks from that RD Realtor and the other representatives were not happy with us. I think they looked at us as being wise guys because we were not giving in to any of the demands. And that started off probably over a year ago, where we start cutting down the footage of their property. And they're in it to make money, but at the same time, we're in it to obviously preserve as much land for our town, the folks that live back in there, and obviously to provide something that's going to be a footprint that's not going to be too evasive on the rest of the folks that live in Lake Intervale there. So I will just tell you, I'm very upset with the Mount Laurel decision. I wish we were not put into this predicament, but at the same time, I have to be obviously fair to not only the folks in Intervale, but the whole entire town. And I just wouldn't want to see that burden being placed on our town, because the reality is the liberal courts are going to push this, and I just don't want us to be boxed in where, you know, next thing you know, you have maybe 500 units there, and you're peering right down on those apartments in your neighborhood there. So I would like to fight to the very end because that's my nature, and stand by my decision of obviously not voting for it. But in this case, I don't want to see anyone that lives over there be hurt by, obviously, apartments being placed in there. So I will stand by, obviously, the rest of this project going through. I'm on the planning board. I will scrutinize everything. So I can look at you all, and I made a decision to hopefully make it, you know, not a burden on the taxpayers, and something that I think that at the end of the day, we're going to preserve 10.2 acres, and hopefully we connect to the Bravacqua property, and we'll probably have over 18 acres. So if that could come true, that would be even a nice deal for everyone, where we'll have a total of 18 acres preserved up there. So obviously, I'm going to vote yes for this project.
Mr. Carifi.
All right, I'd like to say a few things. First off, especially the people from Intervale, you know where I have stood on this project, or, you know, from the inception of this, right from the very beginning. I have fought against that area being developed right from the beginning. If you remember, there's actually, if we go way back to the original plan, where that's where they wanted to have the Whole Foods, the big box, the Target. A lot more retail. They wanted 72 condos back there. That entire area was going to be developed. And I was strongly against that. Do I think that it was worth it the last 2 years? I do, because at least now with the project that is being offered versus the apartment complex, look at what we've been able to get it down to, and we are still going to have some open space back there. As far as Mr. Brancato, I think, is that how you pronounce your name, sir? I did do exactly what you talked about. I probably contacted, I would say, well over 100 residents throughout the town, not just residents that live in Intervale. I contacted people in Lake Hiawatha. I contacted people in Lake Parsippany. I even went all the way up to Puddingstone. I went throughout the entire town to get a consensus on what the people of this town want. Not just the people that it would impact immediately that live right there, but everyone in general. Because that's what I think is the right thing to do, is to listen to the people, and that's what I've always done. Do I like our options? No. I don't like them. I don't like this thing being forced down our throat, kind of. But in talking to a lot of residents in town, if you had the option of A or B, which way would you rather go? I don't think anybody wants 500 plus, or 450 minimum, possibly up to 660 apartments, and the strain that would put on our town. Again, we eliminated the big box. We eliminated the retail. Mr. Valori stated about the meeting that we had in Mr. Inglesino's office. I remember when we were in there and we basically, being in contact with residents in the town, and a lot of their big concerns were the amount of development in there. Get rid of the condos, get rid of the big box, and then we'll talk from there. We told the developer right there, those two things are off the table, and got a little heated, but basically, that's where it was. I know, Ms. Pataki said to get some, we got some, and it's been that way since the very beginning. But again, do I think that it was worth opening the dialogue? I know Mr. Kaplan had numerous discussions. It did go from, if you recall, it went from 0 open space to 9.26 acres. Now it's at 10.63. The buffers have increased greatly. Potentially it could be more when the site plan comes in. So hopefully we will gain some more to increase the buffer even greater. So in taking all of that into account, and like I said, it's speaking to well over 100 residents in this town, I think out of that number, I had one person tell them to go pound salt and fight it all the way. Every single other person said, listen, if these are our options, we need to go with this, and that's what I think is best. Again, do I like the concept of having this threatened? If you recall, 2+ years ago, we were threatened at the last minute. That 666 apartment complex was handed to us at a meeting at Parsippany Hills High School. And right there, I said, I'm not going to let a developer intimidate us. But since then, the COA requirements have changed, and these new standards have come into effect, and that is what we now have to deal with. And again, if I ask all the residents that are sitting in here right now, would you rather have the limited development of retail or the 450 to 660 apartments? I'm sure 99% of the people in here are going to say, go with the limited retail. And again, I do listen to you and I represent you, so therefore I vote yes.
Council President, can I make a comment as well?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. When we, first of all, I appreciate Councilman Valori's statement, because I'm on the planning board with him. And when you're on the planning board, you get a whole different aspect of what's going on in the town and all the land use laws that that you're required. So we sit on that board together, and sometimes it's a struggle up there. But I do want to say this, that yes, there were meetings with RD Realty, and I got to say, Councilman Karifi and Valori, you know, we got them down to pretty much the same project that you have now. Only difference is really the 9.26 acres. The only thing that which was disheartening, was we went to the county for the Open Space Trust Fund money. And we had objectors from Parsippany and objectors from Mountain Lakes. And I'm convinced that's why we never received the money from the county, which I'm addressing you, Karen, that's why we have to use our own Open Space Trust Fund money now. Because I don't think open space committees are used to having objectors, because most of the times the objectors aren't there, especially when it comes to open space. Especially for the piece of property over there, which we proved had connectivity, and Ellen did a wonderful job that night. But we went there knowing we were doomed. So now we have to take the money from our own Open Space Trust Fund, but it's worth it. It's worth it for a reason. I know you had the concern. If you don't use the Open Space Trust Fund money, you don't get the back of that property. Like all the rest of the council members have said, it's going to be, the tax burden will be heavy on the taxpayers of Parsippany. One more comment I'd like to make. Mr. Bueller, you were talking about honest politicians before. And I remember sitting in Dave Kaplan's house with you and Dave, and I told you this is basically what would happen. I was honest with you then. And I guess you didn't like my honesty, but that's okay. That's okay, because you're a good guy. I actually like you. But I was honest with I was honest with you from day one. I was honest with Mr. Kaplan from day one. And I never said I wanted this project. I knew where we would end up, and this is where we would end up, and we did. But I have to give a lot of kudos to the council, because once they recognized the impact, like Mr. Peluso said, to the taxpayer, now it becomes much broader. It becomes much broader in the entire town, because, like Mr. Valori said, being a Board of Education member, you have to bus the kids. You have to hire more teachers. If you have 1,300 more residents or 1,000 more residents, you have to hire more police. You got to hire more. You got to buy more vehicles. We have to service the area. But when you have a project like the Whole Foods, they're responsible to do all that. But I want to thank the council for, you know, taking the time out and really looking at it. And, you know, I feel that although nobody wanted that, I grew up in this town. I've been here 50 years. I've been here since 1964, and I can tell you Lake Parsippany has changed. I can tell you Lake Hiawatha changed. And it's sad at times, because I remember when there was farms. I remember going to Cerbo Nursery. That's where you got your pumpkins all the time. But times have changed, and like Councilman Karifi said, that decision on March 15th, around the affordable housing round 4, that changed everything. And I know there was a lot of comments made tonight about the township attorney. But I have to tell you, there's nobody more versed in affordable housing than our township attorney. And what he said to you tonight, because I do talk to other mayors, I talk to other mayors in other communities that have to deal with this. I feel sorry for the mayor of Morris Plains right now. But I am happy that this takes this piece of property off the rolls, because the taxpayers of Parsippany. And I was told by several residents, if this gets built as affordable housing, I'm moving out. And I want to thank the council for making, I feel, which is the right decision. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Ordinances, second readings, and public hearings, none. Status of adopted ordinances, none. Discussion reminders, schedule meetings, November 24th, 2015, at 7:30 p.m. regular meeting, December 15th, 2015, 7:30 p.m. agenda meeting. Minutes for approval, none. Mayor, anything?
I have nothing, Council
Nothing.
President.
Okay, administration, bids taken, none. To be taken, seal proposals for one new knuckle boom log loader and dump body to be installed on a township vehicle for the Park and Forestry Department. Quotations, proposals, qualifications, none. Ordinances, any questions, concerns? Okay, resolutions, any questions, concerns?
Is this the one right here?
You just want to just say that he's here and
I just wanted to say that on the resolution for the Joe Beckmeyer.
Yes.
He came tonight to the council meeting. He's in the back. Hello, Joe. How are you? Hello, Joe. How are you? I guess you can't.
Joe,
Joe?
you're up.
Right.
Is that okay, Councilman?
Is that okay,
Yes.
Thank you. No, I had to.
I was gonna say, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Before Mr. Beckmeyer speaks, I think you also, just for the record, I just wanted to let you know that Sam Poff is here too, so if you had any questions too on the agenda with regard to the contract, he's here tonight too, and stayed to see if you had any thoughts of that. So, Joe, if you just want to tell them a little bit about yourself. And
Good evening. My name is
you just take it out, Joe.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Beckmeyer. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I have a S4, C4 wastewater licenses. That's treatment plant and collection system license, the NJDEP, and a few other licenses which really don't apply here. Worked for 28 years in Jersey City as a chief engineer, acting director for a period of time. Also worked for 5.5 years, sat in a director's seat in the city of Newark Water and Sewer Utility. I'm looking here to be your superintendent of the sewer system, to satisfy the requirement of a licensed operator, but then also to work with you, the mayor, the administration, and most of the employees to get the most out of them, to empower them to do the job they all want to do, and keeping the treatment plant and the sewer system free from any sort of violations with the NJDEP, so you can continue on with your development in town as ever it might be.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask questions, or?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah, quick question. In regards to your years of experience, is there anything that you're going to be doing at our treatment plant where you don't have a license and there's someone else that needs to use their license down there?
Well, I'm not a licensed electrician. I'm not a licensed plumber, so if any work like that has to be done, it has to be brought in.
In regards to the sewer, with
The
waste
sewer,
management-
no, I have the license, the highest grade for both the treatment plant and the collection system to satisfy those. Also, being a professional engineer, as it comes into reviewing connections to the sewer system and so on, I'll be able to handle that also.
Okay. For the last several months that's been going on, I know we didn't have a superintendent. In regards to how have we been operating that, and then who's licensed at the time?
I mean, I can answer it, or Paula can answer it.
Whatever.
Yeah. We have Steve Ventura, who is has all those licenses, and we have been compensating him to make sure that those licenses, we have been operating well within our rightfully, according to Hoyle.
And in regards to Steve, how long has he been working for the town for?
Many. 20.
Steve has probably been with the township about 37 years.
37.
Oh, he is? Okay.
so.
And in regards to, what is his position and title down there at the plant?
You know what, Councilman, I don't know offhand. I think he's supervising operator. I don't know offhand his exact title. He's a supervisor of
Okay.
operations. I think supervisor of operations.
Okay, and with all his, I guess, his license that have been in place to keep the facility running, are any of his licenses going to be used still, or you have everything that meets the protocol to keep that plant operational?
If Steve just has the S4 and the C4, then I have those also.
Oh, you have them also?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, what will happen is, once Joe comes on board, we'll update the NJDEP permit holder, and Joe's licensing will be on the plant.
Okay.
Just so you understand, there's a big liability of a professional putting their licensing on the plant, and we're very appreciative, and I'd like to publicly say, of Steve Vitrero doing that for the township, or else we would be in a situation of not being able to operate our plant in-house the way we have. And quite honestly, I'd like to take an opportunity to say that the sewer plant employees have done a great job in the absence of a sewer superintendent as well as assistant superintendent for the past few months.
And this is nothing against you, sir, whatsoever. I'm obviously very protective of our, obviously, employees, and, I don't want to put it out there, in public. I didn't realize this gentleman was going to be here in front of us. Is there any reason why we didn't promote within, or was it just based on certifications or experience to run the plant? Because like anything else, everybody wants to be chief or superintendent or whatever the title may be when you're working for the town that many years. I didn't realize it was 30-something years.
37.
Yeah.
You know what,
So
Council-
so my point is there any movement where he could be in another, is there an assistant superintendent there, or?
There is a position open for assistant superintendent.
Okay, would he get the opportunity based on his licenses and stuff like that, the opportunity?
It would be an opportunity like any other employment opportunity in the township.
Okay, so is that going to be open where?
Absolutely. The job will be posted like the superintendent job was, and any employee has the right to apply for that, or outside, the township, who has the requirements that'll be posted as part of the job rec, does have the right to apply for that position.
Yeah, I'm just always concerned that for the morale of our employees, we're taking care of them and they got those opportunities. And I don't know
I agree
exactly.
with you, Councilman.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what the protocols were when you guys start hiring. And again, I really don't want to discuss this in front of you right now with you being here. It's a little awkward. But,
Councilman, it's no big.
the township employees to me come first, and I've
What-
always been that way.
I'm on the board of the AWWA Utility Council, and what they found in many places, employees want to get licenses, but they only want to be the number 2 man.
Oh, okay.
Many don't want to be the number 1 man because that's the one with the bullseye on.
Yes.
You have all the responsibilities. So maybe this gentleman here, feels differently, but I've seen it in many places where no one really wants to. Sometimes they don't even want to, they turn down the licenses.
Okay. And I just want to make sure all our employees are being treated fairly and they have those opportunities to move up, that's all.
I agree with you, Councilman, absolutely.
So, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure meeting you.
Same here.
Okay, Mr. Stanton, engineering report?
Okay, major soil movement permit, GWL 20 East Halsey, GTJ Realty LP, Block 737, Lot 11. Planning Board has approved the major soil movement permit in conjunction with the site plan application 20 East Halsey Road. This office has reviewed the application, recommends the Township Council approve the permit by resolution. Okay, all others, no council action required.
Can we? Roll call for that one.
Mr. DiPiero.
What are we calling roll on?
I don't know.
Major soil
On the
movement
soil.
permit.
Major soil movement?
GWL 20 East Halsey.
Okay.
Yeah, this is for the permit by resolution.
Why wouldn't that be a resolution that's on at our next meeting?
That's what we're going to.
We don't need
Yeah,
it.
I just need, can you draw up a resolution for next meeting?
Draw,
And put that on there?
yes.
You're doing fine, Nora.
Sorry if I didn't clarify that.
Thank you.
Oh, and who's that soil movement permit for?
John,
What building?
Yeah.
What tenant is potentially moving in there?
The soil permit.
I know it's GTJ Realty LP, but who is the potential tenant in that area?
I don't know, I don't have that information right now. So while it's being prepared, I'll get that to
Yeah,
you.
if you can shoot me an
I
email. Okay,
just,
thank you very much.
One
All
of the
right.
things, I know it's your meeting, Council President, but I just, for the sake of the fact that Sam is here, do you want him to just come up and talk about?
Please.
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, if that's.
Sam?
Did you want to speak, Sam?
Don't kill, you can,
This is already,
You okay?
no, I mean, I don't
No,
know
I
if there's
didn't know-
anything they
yeah,
may
if you
wanna
were here
ask
for
you,
anything,
No, he's here because he's representing the union.
Just say everything's good with our contract. I'm just saying, I mean, if I'm gonna come up and say that, I'll come up and say it was good. I'm just.
That's a good
Oh,
thing.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
that's good news.
Okay.
You know what? Let me say that in negotiations with the blue collar workers, I want to go on record as saying it was brought up at the budget meeting when Greg was asked from DPW what about the employees and how they're compensated? And I have said, and Sam will bear me out, in the negotiations, we said to a person on the council, everybody was supportive to try to work out something that would be fair and equitable. You'll notice that there's still, the 2% is the 2%, but we worked on, through the table of going up those steps. And I think together we've reached a great accord of, they feel that, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but Sam has expressed this, that people now feel empowered, as you have asked, if you have said, Councilman Valori, you said you wanted your folks to be empowered. And one of the other elements of this agreement we've done, and this was hard negotiations too, in going up the steps. Now, say somebody, like we all do, every once in a while we mess up. And we worked out an arrangement that we're going to put together what we're calling the ABC team, which means administration and blue collar. And what we're going to do together is to say, you know, why should that person who didn't go up the step because, oh, they messed up, but then they don't want, you don't want them to be like, what difference does it make if I improve? Well, it does make a difference if you improve, because this committee will review somebody within that time period and say, you know what, they should go up sooner, the next step, and maybe not from January 1, but they have improved, and the committee of a whole is saying, you know what, they'll go up the step in September. And so we're empowering the employees to say, there is some care, I'm committed to this, and we're working together. So I didn't mean to, but,
Here he comes.
okay, here he comes.
Here he comes.
See what you did?
Yay, Sam.
I didn't mean to do that, but, no, it was a two-way street.
Okay, real quick. Samuel Poff, I'm the president of the NJBCA. I represent all the blue-collar workers. Like Ellen said, we worked very hard, Ellen, Ann Cucci as well, on the contract. And all I've ever said all I want the blue collar is be treated fair. And Ellen came in, and that's what she did. She's treating us fair, and that's all we ever wanted. So I just want to say thank you to you and Ann Cucci for working very hard.
But I had the guidance from the mayor and the council. I have never been in a position in any municipality in 40 years where I got the marching orders to do what was right and fair and not question the changes, and there was givebacks that they gave too that will be significant going forward. So if you take a real read of this, you'll see that this is this was art.
I'll tell you, it was the most in-depth and the highest concentration of stuff added to any contract in 30 years by the blue collar. But it went the smoothest out of. This is my fourth contract negotiation. Out of all the negotiations, this one had more content than any other contract, but it also went smoother than any other contract, and that is solely thanks to Van Cucci and Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta just say, if Sam has a smile on his face and saying it's fair, you know it's good.
I'm normally not this happy, and I'm up at this microphone.
Sam, I've been calling you throughout the process and talking to you, and one thing I'm very happy to hear about contract negotiations, two people walking away with a smile on their face, so it doesn't look like either one feels negative, and I like seeing that. So congratulations to your team, congratulations, Ellen, and your team. Great job. It's nice to see you.
Rob, I want to thank the council. A lot of times, you guys are the ones behind the scenes that you don't really see. That you didn't sit down at the table with me, but I know every one of you had some input on this contract. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
One happy face is
Keep the employees
Okay, Chief Financial Officer, resolutions. Any questions, concerns, issues? Okay, Attorney?
Nothing further.
Okay. Just,
That's surprising.
while we're under, I know last meeting I had brought up the potential for the resolution or ordinance for the responsible bidder, and you were going to look into the responsible bidder resolution. You were going to look into some other towns.
Yes, and that is, yes. I I got a little sidetracked with this, so we
Okay.
would get,
Just so you know, if you want to check in, I did do some due diligence stuff. I know East Hanover has one.
Okay.
And as far as I know, they do not have any thresholds or any limitations.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was just looking for similar towns in the
Okay.
area close to us.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I just wanted to correct. Contrary, again, to what you read in the local press, we are getting the 130 acres.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's in process. I just didn't want there to be, you know, to the extent I can correct misinformation, I'd like to do that. Didn't say that, and that's not the case. It's only the dam property that was in question and that I was referring to, the actual dam itself.
Just a quick question, 'cause Mr. Stanton just brought it up. As far as with that responsible bidder, is that something that we would want to have in place prior to this, for instance, this project getting underway?
No, because it wouldn't apply. Because it's not it would need a pilot. It'd have to be a redevelopment project, first of all. Or it's a project that the pilot is the subsidy that gives the connection to that ordinance applying, or it applies to any public jobs that you put out. But just a private job that's under zoning, it wouldn't apply.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Inglesino. That means that the 130 acres, we didn't lose it because we extended the contract again?
No. I brought the contract. We were always, under the contract, we were always getting...
Property is ours, we have not taken ownership.
No.
at that point.
There's two different things. There's the 130 acres, which is the open space and environmentally sensitive area as set forth in the settlement agreement with Forge Pond, and there's the dam. They're two different things. Okay, the 130 acres, we are in process of receiving those deeds to that property. Okay, that is not what I was referring to last time, but that is what has been widely reported, which is just factually not true. It was just wrong. What I was talking to in terms of what we didn't take was the dam, just the dam itself.
How many acres is that?
I don't know, it's de minimis, just the dam. It's like
Just the dam.
Yeah,
Fraction
it's
of
just-
an acre.
Just the dam. It's not like.
Small fraction of
It's
an
just a very
acre.
small piece. I mean, I can talk to you more about it offline, but
Yeah, I'd like to learn more about it.
there was incorrect information out in the public about how we're not getting the 130 acres, and that's just factually wrong. I don't know how else to say it. But we're in the process of getting the deeds and the surveys correct, and so I can assure you that prior to there won't be any COs issued on that job until we get those deeds. They're behind schedule from where they were supposed to be, which I'm not surprised about. We had some pretty aggressive timeframes in the agreement. And we let them go ahead with the building permit because they prepaid their affordable housing obligation, but no COs without the deeds. Then they're still away from the CO, so.
So when do we expect taking possession of the 130 acres?
You know, hopefully by the end of the year, but he's not getting any
That's
COs
soon?
without it. Hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay.
Okay, township offices, committees, communication.
I just want to report on the Committee for Economic Development. Just want to relay my sincere appreciation because the committee has been actively engaged with attending grand opening celebrations and ribbon cuttings and giving out plaques to new businesses coming to the community. You know, one thing about economic development is not only about bringing new business into the community, but retaining them and watching them grow as well. And one such business was one that grew and took over a space which was Paul Miller recently, and that space actually was a building that was abandoned. So it really created a positive impact in that part of our community on the corridor 46. So I'd like to thank the Economic Development Committee, and they are respectfully asking for a business card they can hand to them with contact information concerning our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, communications, applications, any questions, concerns? All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
Motion.
Motion made by Mr.
Second.
Paluso, seconded by Mr. Valori. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Valori?
Yes.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes. Please, when you come forward, state your name and address and sign in.
Dave Kaplan, 263 Intervale. Mr. DePiero, I'm not going to accept your I told you so. If we had listened to you, we'd have a target in the backyard.
Wrong. We negotiated down the Target and the townhouses were negotiated down. We just didn't have 3 votes on the council to move forward with that.
The bottom line is, the package today is better than the package that you voted yes for.
Acknowledged.
All right, so you told us.
But you didn't know that was going to happen back then, and neither did I.
No one could predict the outcome, but we knew we could do
But I-
better.
but I
Just let
knew
me finish my
low-income
3
housing
minutes.
was the
Can I
other
finish my 3
alternative.
minutes, and then you can say whatever you want? You told me once, you guys are going to get what you deserve.
I never said that.
Yes, you did.
You're
And
wrong.
there was a room full
You're
of people
wrong.
there. I respect you for trying. I respect you for being in office for all these years. Honestly, it's impressive. But the citizens have a right to fight for what they believe is the best thing for them, and that's all I did. And I shouldn't be made to feel guilty for doing that. And like everybody else, and I think it's safe for me to be able to voice my opinion now because this is over, I didn't like this package, but I did feel it was the best thing. And I told every councilman who asked me what I thought. And I said, I think the right thing to do is to vote yes tonight, for the record. Now you can yell at me.
I just didn't appreciate the letter you sent out blasting me.
I understand that. And
was
your
not-
wife
it was
told me
not
that in the
all true,
hallway
it
when
was
she asked to speak to
distorted.
me and started getting pretty angry at me.
Yeah, well, the
and
letter was
I
pretty
told her,
nasty.
I don't think it was nasty. I think anything I said was factual, and I'll stand by it. And I do stand by the fact that you said you guys are going to get what you deserve. It was in John Beeler's house. It was in John Beeler's house. You were sitting on the left side of the table,
Distorting what I
and there were 8 people in that room. But regardless, as I told your wife, and we shook hands at the end, she's a nice lady, this is done, and it's time to move forward.
Roy Messmer, 10 Drumlin Drive. How's everybody?
Good to
Good.
see you, Roy.
Thank you. First question here tonight. I see on page 3 of the paperwork, the retirement payout authorization. Obviously, we're bonding for that. The almost $4 million.
No, we don't bond it.
We don't
Doesn't
bond?
get bonded, it's spread over 5 years. That's what
Okay,
that
right,
means.
right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. What are we up to now? What's our number with this retirement payout? We
But
got
how
to be
much,
pushing
that's
5,
for
6
this
million.
current year. I
Sorry?
don't have the,
He's asking what you're up to.
What you're up to?
what do you mean?
Well, we got to show it on the financial statements, right? I mean, the
Yes.
liability. So what are we up to now? About
I don't-
5, 6
I'm not
million?
even sure the total number. I can get that for you, though.
All right. Hopefully, we're nearing an end to it, because we're going to have to use open space money to pay for this stuff. Next thing, I do want to get to Sam's contract. I'll hopefully have enough time, but let me just cover something else. Something has come to my attention. As you all know, I get a lot of phone calls like you guys do. I'm not an elected official, regarding the crossing guards. I don't know if the council's aware of it. And my first question is, the crossing guards have to go in for a physical now? Is that a state law?
It was under the JIF.
Oh, under the
Joint
JIF.
Insurance Fund, yes.
Okay. And under the JIF, they have to be outside their cars? I mean, you know, I see a lot of crossing guards, because the amount I'm running and walking in this town, I've never seen a problem with the crossing guard, except for one, whose son was running for office, and he was handing out his political flyers. I reported that to the police, and I asked that this guy, this is many years ago, it's about 10, 12 years ago, he should have been fired, they didn't fire him. But the rest of the crossing guards, they're fantastic. I mean, I'm sure, I know a few instances, one guy didn't come with his pants on, I mean, you know, but I know that one. But-
Well, I know it now. I didn't know it then.
Would you require these men and women, and they're not young people, most of them, to stand outside their car in the pouring rain? Yeah, as long as they're parked where they can see the kids coming, because I know too, there's so few kids that walk to school in this town anymore. It's a real shame. But you do have to have a crossing guard at these streets, because there could be that one kid. Because like I said, I've gotten some, and then I'm hearing the police are having to take some of these, and they're paying a lot of money per hour for the policemen to be there. Last question tonight. Being that we've hired, and he has nothing to do with this, of course, he's not involved with the accounting of the building. Has Hanover paid their back sewer bill?
yet?
Actually, they have caught up in that they're paying the current bill, which was a huge discussion. And yesterday, we just had a conversation about catching up. So we're working it out with them.
Charging the interest, because if I don't pay my bill on time.
Yeah, right. I have a total, a number I can tell you about, and in there would be the interest. I haven't calculated that. And I was just, let me tell you, for 3 years, they didn't pay. We needed them to catch up, to pay the current bill, and that's where we are at this point. And now we're working out something with them to pay the back due. I haven't charged interest per se. I mean, you know, they just got the final bill from the previous year. Yes.
We've had this situation with Mountain Lakes, with the water bill.
Yes.
I mean, it just gets ridiculous that we're not able to, people fighting us about our meters aren't working right.
Please.
Okay, I do have a few more seconds. Regarding, one of the first days Ellen on the job, I went to Ellen, and I said, Ellen, I said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but our blue-collar workers are paid so much less than the surrounding towns. And it's an embarrassment to me. Yeah, it might cost me more in tax dollars, but these guys, for the, you know, they do a great job, and they have a tough job, and they've never been treated right in this town. Why? I don't know. But I saw Sam here tonight, I figured, oh boy, I love seeing Sam talk. He's one of the best speakers next to Mary, and a few other good people here, Nick and so on. But glad to hear, you know, I went right up to him, I said, did you guys finish your contract yet?
30 seconds.
Happy? And he goes, we're very pleased. So, you know, Ellen went out, I don't know how she did it, where the money's coming from or whatever, but I'm happy to hear about that.
Open space, no.
No,
I
I
would-
feel about the sewer service.
I know, no.
I didn't want to use
No.
that word.
No.
I just got one question. It won't be long.
Okay, have a nice Thanksgiving if I don't see you.
Hey, Ellen?
Yeah.
I just wanted to try to make it to midnight anyway.
Yeah.
But, quick question, in regards to, the JIF, obviously, gave the guidance for the crossing guards.
Right.
So, the question I have is, if in fact, any of them make any type of civil complaint based on that, are they going to
As
own
you
it
know,
then?
Councilman, I did give you, you know, some information on this.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And if you recognize what we did was there's a whole cadre of different pieces and parts to this that I would rather have the discussion. Suffice to say, the most important thing in doing this and working with the police and making sure that we did check out Concentra and make sure that they were working with our people, because they do a good job, and on a whole they're great. Some of the things that did come out was that, you know, certain people did need a cataract operation.
Okay.
We were concerned about their sight, their hearing, and also their ability. It didn't just come from, just so you know, nothing about anybody's pants, but just so you know that one of the reasons why we felt we were on the right track was when at a meeting of the police department meeting, you know, the traffic folks who meet with all the crossing guards, and a few of them said, I really can't lift the stop sign up anymore. Can you punch holes into it? We knew we might have had a little bit of a problem.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not being, it's not,
No,
it's
these are
not
just-
funny. These are things that,
No,
you know,
absolutely.
that's a concern. You should have some dexterity. But what came out of it was, just like you said, because you don't think that every crossing guard said to me, how come the police can sit in their car and I can't sit in my car? We addressed that. I did have a meeting. I'll tell you, I don't miss a trick. We cover all the bases. We fine-tuned. We made sure that when they were going for their tests, we said if it's only a matter of that Concentra wanted to see their latest cardiogram or their eye test, we said, if they're not a detriment, put them right back on. That's why I was saying we put them right back on the crossing guard, and when they can on their post, and when they can get to the doctor and whatever, they would submit the paper and be, you know, golden. What also came out of it is the length of time might need to be reduced. And also the various, as someone just said, you know, 1 or 2 people anymore crossing. They're going to take a look at, there may be posts that need to not be there anymore.
Yeah.
So,
And
so
no-
some good came out of
No,
it.
and I'm glad, because obviously if
Yes.
somebody has an issue, hopefully we'll make it better for them.
Which they did say.
And
I had a mini meeting with about 7 or 8 of the
Yes.
of the crossing guards, and one woman said, "I'm very happy. I didn't realize how bad my eyesight was."
Which is great. And the reason why I say this is, working for the police department, I worked with a lot of them, and they've been around for years. They've been around for probably a lot more of the police officers that are actually on the police
Right, and
department
if you
now.
can, and if you
I just want to
speak
make sure
to-
we're taking care of our employees. That's
We are definitely
key.
taking care of our employees because, you know, I was going to meet with, I guess I can just say, well, anyway, Doris, who was our, and I met with Doris, and Doris brought about 8 or, it was maybe more, 8 or 9 of her closest friends, and they expressed some of their concerns. We listened, and we addressed it. Ann, myself, and Hank went to Concentra. We wanted to talk with the doctor. We wanted to talk to how our people were treated. And then we also then met with the police and said, look at, and they said, hey, what's come out of this is not just caring about our kids and the crossing guards themselves, that
Absolutely,
they
yeah.
wouldn't get hurt. Because hearing is very important. I mean, I don't want somebody backing up. And so we addressed it in a dignified manner. But
I don't want them
some-
to be embarrassed. That was
No, they
big.
were not. We spoke to them. I mean, sometimes they would tell you more information than you
Yeah,
would say,
exactly.
stop, you know, and I don't want to go. It does have something to do with pants. But anyway, I will say this, that if you speak to anyone that was at that meeting, they were all appreciative that we listened, we said we would work with them. We did address it. I said to the police, I said, you know, you're in your car, and you're saying that. They said, well, it has to be the timing when we get out of our car. I said, well, I'm hoping you got out of your car when the kids were crossing, that you weren't
Absolutely,
sitting in the
yes.
car.
Yes.
And they said, yeah, so, and I did say it that way, so,
Okay.
you know,
So-
and they're watching this right now, so they can tell you that.
So
that's
it's
what I
going in the
said.
right direction with the transition.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. We're getting them back quicker, we're getting them back, and that's why I said drastically, and again, the police do cover it, and there is some overtime bump in when someone's sick or
Yeah,
has
absolutely.
that thing.
That
So,
comes with it.
we are addressing it, and we're treating our people fairly and saying it's, we gave them the time to go. Somebody said, well, how many hours? I said, they're seniors, they have to make an appointment, you give them the day.
Just a suggestion, you know, maybe you, Paul, and Ann, did you guys get certified as crossing guards, you know?
I did.
Fill in?
Yes, I'm filling. Thanks. With my hat as the acting clerk and the,
Paul is
yeah, I
looking
have
like
carpal
he's trying to
tunnel
kill you
for all
right
the
now.
things I have to sign twice.
We'll give you t-shirts.
Ellen, you're the best.
Give me a
Thank you.
t-shirt. Yeah, thanks. Can I join your union? You got better.
Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. And thanks for caring about those folks too, Roy.
Nicholas Somiak in Lake Hiawatha, whether you want to hear me or not, I'm very
Please, I know.
depressed about what happened here tonight. Mr. DiPiero, what you said about the COA, the wetlands and everything, not true. Look at the paper I gave you. There's certain criteria that can't develop environmentally sensitive lands. Back in 2010, our co-obligation was 274 units. Then, here, look at this. Well, continuation in the regional management plan gives the township its protection. It shields Parsippany from builders' remedy lawsuits, said Inglesino. Action tonight could be withdrawn later, asked Council Vice President John Fox. Yes, it will buy us time, said Schnickus. There will be another chance to reevaluate compliance. Good, said Councilman Michael DiPiero. I have no desire to join the Highlands Regional Master Plan. That was your only way. And what I heard tonight is like a scorched earth policy. The Germans are coming, the Nazis are coming. We have to burn everything down so they can't build affordable housing. All our land, we're better off to have a retail space that may or may not be used, may last for who knows however long, while we have already vacant space that's not being used. And it makes no sense. It's a scorched earth policy. This is from your own 2000 and 4 master plan. I'm just gonna read you one short paragraph. It's about how we want to respect environmentally sensitive landscapes. Additionally, the township takes cognizance of the fact that there are numerous sites in municipalities that are typified by extensive environmentally sensitive features and therefore may not be able to accommodate its full zone development potential. That was Waterview. Never had a chance. We could have, with your law firm, Mr. Inglesino, or under conformance, we could have beat RD. We could have beat RD. I'm totally confident that we could have beat RD, because you can't just put affordable housing anywhere you want. Everybody that voted for that, in my opinion, you did the wrong thing. You didn't stick to your guns, and you talked about OSHA last time, Mr. Karifi. You said OSHA. One of the principles of OSHA, the public safety law, is to build on advances already made. We have science and law on our side, but we're asked as Americans, because we're free, we volunteer to conform because we're in the planning zone, which puts developers, gives them a higher criteria, makes them really look at what they're doing, balance the development with natural resources. We didn't have any of that. We had the gun to the head. Yeah, we had a mafia type thing that just took place in this thing here by RD, the real devil. And all these let him get away with it because of the expense. What else is money for? But if we were under the regional management plan, we'd have the legal protection. So we're selling ourselves short. We might as well, next to that Columbus statue out there, raise the Confederate flag. That's how I feel about Parsippany right now. Flat maps, the earth is flat, Christopher Columbus, no contour lines, all that stuff. It's not going to match up. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be full of trash. And this beautiful neighborhood here is never to be again. Like the gentleman said, your house lived there, we used to be trees. So we should all feel good about it. There used to be farms, there used to be trees. There's less and less sustainability in the world. You have to defend your landscape. And we didn't do that tonight. Very disappointed. Thank you.
Few quick questions. Mr. Russo, did you hear from Mr. Driscoll as to why those 2 attorneys are not there?
Nope.
You plan on following up on?
I'm gonna have to do it myself.
This has been going on since 9:15, just to
Yep.
throw that at you. The SROs, what's happening? I think there was a request to have the chief come in. Is anything happening with that?
I didn't hear anything back yet, Pat.
Okay. Just like the council to know, I congratulate Nora, Helen, and their work on election day. They're getting us there, no problem. I didn't hear one boom thing that happened. We've done many years, we've had things.
So
So they did their jobs, they did it well, they did more than their jobs, it's not their job. I forgot, you have to work, right?
Yeah, and if I could, I know I don't want to take your time, but Leslie and Susan and a few others, and yes, and we're very proud. In fact, Dan Grassi from the county, I ran into her, and she said, although we were the undone, or what we've never done before, she said there were other towns that had clerks there forever. She said, we got more than a passing grade, so thank you for that, but it was because it was a team, right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll write it down. Walk it on the calendar, please. Thank you.
I'm not happy either with what happened tonight. However, you both would, it's been a rock and a hard place. And you understand that for the 3 members who really important for the taxpayers of us. Said that of my disagreements in what he's running our town. So let's try to improve. And one last thing I'd like to say is that I'm sorry Mr. Ida came back, because I heard he had some words to me after I left the room, that he couldn't wait till I came back, that he considered that I was rude and disrespectful tonight. He doesn't understand my passion for things. Okay? And Mr. Ida came as a personal grudge with me. Okay? So I wish you would have stayed, so I could have acknowledged that comment for you. Yes, I am boisterous. Yes, because I do believe in things, and I'll fight to the death for those things I believe in. Just like some other people say we do. Don't penalize me because I have a passion. That's my passion. It's in this tenant, which I didn't even know it. I've lived here for 16 years. Can't tell you how many years I lived in the other place because you get my age and my okay?
So we only have to add the two numbers together?
Things that I bring attention to them that they don't know are happening. I'm not up here to sit here and just make trouble. I'm up here because, like all, I get phone calls from people. I get letters in my mailbox.
30 seconds back.
On my front door. Because people know I have a passion for Parsippany. Thank you all. I appreciate what you tried to do. And I respect you for what you tried to do. No intimidation. Being intimidated by who. I respect you for doing what you thought was best. In this case, being put between that rock and the hard place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
I'm living road in Terrace, Parsippany, New Jersey. I've been sitting here all night, hearing people complain about what this council did and did not do. I recommend that if they want change, run for council yourself, so you can affect something. That's all I got to say. Money for everybody. And that goes for everybody.
Okay, all right.
That goes.
All right.
Use your own money.
Okay, see no one else come forward, entertain a motion to
Make a motion?
end the public hearing? Second. Motion made by Mr. Valori, seconded by Mr. Paluso. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Paluso?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Valori?
Yes.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Valori?
Okay. Ordinance 2015:26, an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 430 zoning of the revised general ordinance of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, adding a new Article
49.
49, yeah, establishing RC plans, retail, commercial district, and designating certain zone boundaries into the township. Be it resolved that above ordinance be introduced, read by title, and passed on first reading of a meeting of the Township
All right.
Council
Please sit down. Go ahead, Mr. Valori.
of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills held on November 10th, 2015, and then that said ordinance be further considered for second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held on December 8th, 2015 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time, or as soon thereafter as the matter be reached at the municipal building in said township, at which time all persons interested shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinance. Be it further resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance with the notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law.
Motion made by Mr. Valori, seconded by Mr. Stanton. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Mr. Valori.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes, this time entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion.
Oh, before we adjourn the meeting, I just want to take a moment to thank, tomorrow's Veterans Day, thank all our veterans.
Yes, yes.
Okay, at this time, entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. Stanton, seconded by Mr. Paluso. Roll call.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Paluso.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton. Mr. Valori.
Yes.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
They did it in comparison with Vietnam, and we're pretty close to Vietnam.
I know.